Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He's so good at just like saying incredibly annoying in the most smarmy way possible that like you have to respond to it. If I was sitting across from him and he said that, I would lose my mind too. I'm saying it. Oh, all right. Let's get to it. Let's watch the debate. Okay, let's do it. Let's watch pieces of it at least. There it is. Ben Shapiro debated Destiny on the Lex Fridman podcast. I assume they agree on a lot more than they disagree on, but for the sake of content, there will be a little bit of contrarian back and forth. Wait, 3 people voted for me in New Hampshire? Wait, really? Oh, fuck you, dude. That's fuck. Oh, how do I fall for that? I don't know. I'm such a stupid idiot. That's how I fall for it. God damn it. I want to believe it, though. Anyway, earlier in the day, you told the chatter to get better bait. This is a prime example of good bait. Oh, yeah, no. It's a great bait. At the top of the hour, by the way, there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. For $5 or free, all the ad aheads. You can also get gifted a sub. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. All right.
Ben, you're conservative. Destiny, you're a liberal. Can you each describe what key values underpin your philosophy on politics and maybe life? And
Digha5363, thank you for the 50 gifted subs. Israel-Palestine section. Yeah, I want to hear their overall values first.
in the context of this left-right political spectrum. You want to go first?
Yeah. So I think that we have a huge country full of a lot of people, a lot of individual talents,
Just want to say they're both liberal and also both conservative.
capabilities. And I think that the goal of government, broadly speaking, should be to try to ensure that everybody's able to achieve as much.
Why cover this if you're not willing to go on Lex Fridman yourself? I am willing to go on Lex Fridman. I just don't have I haven't had time. That's it. I don't know why people are so contentious. Like, I already said I would do it.
As possible. So on a liberal level, that usually means some people might need a little bit of a boost when it comes to things like education. They might need a little bit of a boost when it comes to providing certain necessities like housing or food or clothing. But broadly speaking, I mean, I'm still a liberal, not a communist or a socialist. I don't believe in the, total command economy, total communist takeover of all of the, economy. But I think that broadly speaking, the government should kind of like kick in and help people when they need it.
I puked in my mouth of the most skilled political debaters, and who the fuck on the left claims him? No, he is a skilled debater. They both are skilled debaters. Come on, guys. It doesn't matter. Being a skilled debater doesn't mean that you have good ideas or you are correct. Obviously, Ben Shapiro is a skilled debater, and I would not say that his ideas are good nor correct at all. They're good at debating. Debating is just about knowing the right talking points that you can deploy. It doesn't mean that you are being truthful or honest. In many instances, as a matter of fact, I would say that he's a skilled debater, specifically because on issues that he's completely outside of his range, Destiny and Ben Shapiro both have very quick ways of deflecting the conversation and reorienting it to an area that they are more comfortable in. That is what a good debater is. A good debater is basically, it's theatrics, right? A good debater is able to make themselves come across more confident and basically destroy the opposite argument. Like, it's just rhetorical talent. Exactly. And they both have it. We've seen it before. Ben Shapiro was asked about the Great March of Return. He had no idea what the fuck it was. Obviously, college students are not very good at debating, but they can have information that the other person doesn't have. When he was hit with that, he very quickly parried, right? The problem here is that I think a lot of people mistake being a good debater with having the correct takes. You can have piffy, quick retorts and really good talking points that make you come across like you're in the right. You can trip up your opponent. You know what I mean? Hit those iframes, right? Yeah. I'm glad D-Money is finally here so we can explain things correctly. Yes. Oh my God, run the ad during his opening. Dog shit. Destiny fans, once again, proving to just not be normal at all. Like, just can't hold it in at all, okay?
And that government can and should be big.
Not necessarily. I noticed that when liberals talk about government, or especially taxes, it seems like they talk about it for taxes' sake or bigness sake. So people talk about taxes sometimes as like a punishment, like tax the rich. I think taxing the rich is fine insofar as it funds the programs that we want to fund. But Democrats have a really big problem demonizing success or wealth.
Why do you even give Ben Genesito as much time of day as you do? Because he is one of the most popular right-wing commentators out there, and his platform and his ideas are identical to many people that I despise. It's the same. Well, it's in some ways similar to why Destiny talks about me all the time, because regardless of the fact that Destiny tried to present himself as like a progressive or whatever, he fucking despises that shit. That way, he can just regularly fucking talk about like whatever I'm presenting and, well, not really tackle the issue head on, but instead talk about how, I'm bad off of like clickbaited, clip chipped compilation videos. And that way he doesn't have to undermine the idea. He can simply undermine the person, and therefore it's like you destroyed the idea as well. Anyway, let's keep going.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to be wealthy, to be a billionaire or whatever, as long as we're funding what we need to fund.
Ben, what do you think it means to be a conservative? What's the philosophy that underlies your political view?
So first of all, I'm glad that Destiny, you're already coming out as a Republican. That's exciting. I mean, we hold a lot in common in terms of, the basic idea that people ought to have as much opportunity as possible, and also insofar as the government should do the minimum amount necessary to interfere in people's lives in order to pursue certain functions, particularly
okay, how was that any different than what he said? Okay, you guys are in agreement then. Kiss and make up. Like, what do you mean?
the local level. So a lot of governmental discussions on a pragmatic level end up being discussions about where government ought to be involved, but also at what level government ought to be involved. And I have an incredibly subsidiary view of government. I think that, local governments, because you have higher levels of homogeneity and consent, are capable of doing more things.
Homogeneity at the local level. That's why. Yeah, that's why it works. That's a fucking straight up dog whistle, by the way. Oh yeah, homogeneity is the reason why local government is more effective. And not because like you get to see immediate tangible impacts of like your own election and your own outcomes. You vote for someone at the local level, you have more of a connection with them because they're not like 11 steps removed from you with like 1,000 different lobbyists that have that person's ear. Okay. That's the reason. It has nothing to do with homogeneity. So dumb.
And as you abstract up the chain, it becomes more and more impractical and more divisive to do more things. In my view, government is basically there to preserve certain key liberties.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's a dog whistle, and it's laying the foundation against Nordic social democracies working as a counter, even though the reason why those Nordic social democracies work is not because of homogeneity at all.
Those key liberties pre-exist the government insofar as they are more important than what priorities the government has. The job of government is to maintain, for example, national defense, protection of property rights, protection of religious freedom. Right? These are...
Yeah. You hate big government except for when women want to get abortions, in which case then you want the biggest of government. Got it.
These are the key focuses of government as generally expressed in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And I agree with the general philosophy of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't do more on a governmental level, again, as you get closer to the ground, which, by the way, is also embedded in the Constitution. People forget the Constitution was originally applied to the federal government, not to local and state governments. But if I were going to define conservatism, it would actually be a little broader than that, because I think to understand how people interact with government, you have to go to kind of core values. And so for me, there are a couple of premises. One, human beings have a nature. That nature is neither good nor bad. We have aspects of goodness and we have aspects of badness. Human beings are sinful. We have temptations. And what that means is that we have to be careful not to incentivize the bad, and that we should incentivize the good. Human beings do have agency and are capable of making decisions in the vast majority of circumstances. And it is better for society if we act as though they do. Second, the basic idea of human nature, there is an idea, in my view, that all human beings have equal value before the law. Yeah, I'm a religious person, so I'd say equal value before God, but I think that's also sort of a key tenet of Western civilization, being non-religious.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It is insufferable. Oh my God. Like they both have the same exact argument, except for like a bunch of social conservatism and God shit that he's adding on. Jesus Christ, it's insufferable.
Or religious.
Okay,
That
I'm skipping
that does
some
not
of it.
necessarily mean that every person is equally equipped to do everything equally well. And so it is not the job of government to
It's like, yeah.
suggest is something that. So those are a few key tenets, and that tends to materialize in a variety of ways. The easiest way to sum that up would the traditional kind of three legs of the conservative stool. Although now obviously there's a very fragmented conservative movement in the United States. Would be
You just said two neoliberals, one Reaganite, one Bill Clintonite, and you're unironically not wrong. So I guess in a way, this is basically the left-right spectrum of permissible ideas in the American election cycles year over year. So you're not wrong. It is neoliberalism with like marginal differences. One side is like a little bit more socially conservative than the other side. The other side is more socially progressive than the other side, but will like oftentimes concede and cede ground to the social conservatism if they feel as though that social conservatism will help them basically preserve the supposed free market or market competition that they claim to care about.
a socially conservative view in which family is the chief institution of society, like the little platoons of society, as Edmund Burke suggested, in which free markets and property rights are extraordinarily valuable and necessary, because every individual has the ability to be creative with their property and
Are
to
you gonna engage with what he's saying or dismiss it with no rationale? What do you want me to engage with? What can I engage with? He just said he wants he wants little government, and he wants to incentivize good things and not incentivize bad things. Okay, I don't know what he thinks is good and bad. Well, I do know, but it's very different than what I think is good and bad, right? When he leaves it like that, okay, that is not an idea that is like fun to engage with at all. It's just a stupid fucking argument. You just want me to expose the hypocrisy in his rhetoric, and sure, I will do that for you, okay? He claims he wants small government, but he also wants to stop women from being able to get fucking abortions. There you go. Inherent hypocrisy right there. Just because he turned around and said, I actually also, I don't know, believe in God and you know, the godly way of doing things, and the government should preserve the godly way of doing things, doesn't change the reality. That's inherently hypocritical for him to fucking say this shit. But thank you. I do love when Ben Shapiro fans come in here and try to tell me to like engage with his ideas. I would love to debate Ben Shapiro. He has chosen not to debate me, but to debate the likes of Anna Kasparian and now Destiny as well.
freely alienate that property. And finally, I tend toward a hawkish foreign policy that suggests that the world is not filled with wonderful people who all agree with us and think like us. And those people will pursue adversarial interests if we do not protect our own interests.
Can I ask a
And that way he can just like have a hawkish military as well. He can have like a hawkish foreign policy take, despite the idea that he's like some kind of libertarian.
question on that? I'm so
Yeah,
curious.
sure.
Okay. I'm excited for this conversation because I consider you to be really intelligent. But I feel like sometimes there are ways that conservatives talk about certain issues that seem to defy logic and reason, I guess. So here, and I'm sure you feel the same way about well, I feel the same way about progressives, but even some liberals for sure. Before I ask this question, it's going to relate to education. We can agree, broadly speaking, that statistics are real and that not everybody could do everything.
Dude, I'm gonna keep it $150. I feel like this is Destiny's way of trying to like bring in more right wingers into his audience and like I guess change their mind by being very nice to Ben Shapiro. I like to look at who his enemies are and who his friends are. And on that, when I look at who he like hangs out with, who he considers to be his friends and who he considers to be his like most mortal enemies, if you find yourself routinely and regularly shitting on like the most marginal of leftist positions that have no bearing on like American politics whatsoever, and you routinely find yourself like hyping up a right-wing figure like Ben Shapiro, saying he's actually smart. I know that that's probably a way to like disarm him in this debate, but if you find yourself agreeing more with right-wing perspectives, which do dominate American politics, and hyper focusing on left-wing perspectives as like the scariest thing, then you might not really be a liberal or a progressive. Okay.
So for a grounded example, my life was pretty bad. I got into streaming and I turned my life around, and that was really cool. But I can't expect everybody to do what I did, right? Like everybody being able to join the NBA or to be like a streamer.
Well, of
or-
course, everybody
yeah,
has different qualities, sure.
Okay. So I used to be a lot more libertarian when I was 21. And one of the things
They are two grown men. They can disagree with each other without having to yell and throw insults. I learned a lot from this interview from both of them. Oh, God.
that dramatically changed kind of my view on government manipulation of things in the I guess in society came when it came time to deal with my son and the school that he went to. And one of the things that I noticed was when it came time to send my son to school, I could either do private education or I could do public. Personally, I did 12 years of Catholic private education. However, the public schools in Nebraska, depending on where you lived, were very, very, very good. And I opted for a certain district. I bought a house there. I moved there. And then my son was able to go to those schools. And he's been going through those schools. And the difference of availability of like technology, like these kids are taking home iPads in like first grade. They've got like huge computer labs and everything. Do you think that there is some type of, I don't want to say injustice or unfairness, because I'm not even looking at it that way, just pragmatically, that there might be children that are in certain schools that if they just had better funding or more access to technologies or things available to them, that those kids would become more productive members of society, that with like a little bit of a help, they could actually achieve more and do better for all of society?
So I think that on the list of priorities, when you
Ben Shapiro is going to deflect away, either go school choice here, or he's going to say that it's like family values. Okay. He could do both, honestly. But regardless, Destiny's argument here is good. It's solid. It's not just about obviously iPads and shit. There's a lot more to it, and I'm sure he will get to it. But having said that, ultimately, this conversation between these two people will not go anywhere productive unless it goes back to, I guess, how to manage taxes.
comes to education, the availability of technology is actually fairly low on the list of priorities.
Sure. The
Meaning
two
that
things I've heard are food availability and I think air conditioning, I think are the two biggest ones that I hear, but sure.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing in terms of education itself, not just the physical facilities that we're talking about, would actually be two-parent family households.
Sure.
Okay. The way to respond to this is quite simple. Okay? Of course he's going to say that because he has nothing else. He's a fucking idiot. The way to respond to this is super simple. When you look at divorce rates or when you look at two-parent household rates across the board in other countries, obviously there's other externalities that are that play a role in this, like the carceral state. Ben Shapiro will try to, of course, bring it back to like culture, which is a substitute for race in this conversation, right? But when he says, "Oh, it's the parents," it's like that's the real issue with education. The question should be, okay, like divorce rates are increasing all across the world. Why is it that educational outcomes in other countries where they have a better, more efficient public education focused structure, regardless of the divorce rates going in either direction, why do they still yield better outcomes than the United States of America? That's the question. That's the counter to this question, rather. Anything else, and if you concede, if you say something like, okay, two-parent households, that's important, the moment that you cede territory in this argument to that take, you've completely moved beyond. He has very successfully taken the conversation and led the narrative to this absolute nonsensical position.
Communities that have fathers in them is actually the number one, decisive according to Roland Fryer and many studies done on this particular topic. And
yeah, by the way, the two-party household concept is directly a consequence of material wealth. Okay, two-parent households yield better outcomes for the child, not because of some holistic, spiritual, religious reason, but because two parents imply that you have more spare time to take care of the child and you have more disposable income to ensure that the child has the child doesn't have to work, for example. It's dual income. That's what matters. Dual income and also more free time. That's what matters. And that is how you arrive at, I guess the healthier, healthier, smarter, better educated kids. As a child of one-parent household, this shit's always so pitiful. Blaming all society's problems on broken families negates factors that tend to break those families up. My high school homeroom teacher always dogged on broken families and is incredibly shitty punching down. Yeah, I'm not even talking about that. The other part of this conversation, of course, is that there's also a dog whistle for like a substitute for like black people too, even though, you know, there's obviously a issue of like having children out of wedlock if you consider it to be an issue in American society across the board. But having said that, I think that the two-parent thing is a post hoc rationalization rather than a real consistent way of solving a problem, right? A lot of those studies that Ben is talking about look at correlation and imply causation. That's the other side of this equation as well. The notion that like two-parent households are actually, they yield like more successful children is a consequence of a shit ton of different external factors. But Ben lands on that conclusion and says, and that's the way to solve it. Yeah, people that come from two-parent households that have more disposable income and more free time to take care of the child are often going to have other factors that play a role in the development of the child as well.
The idea that money alone, that investment of resources is the top priority in schooling is belied by the fact that LAUSD, which is where I went to school when I was younger, they pour an enormous amount of money into LAUSD. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars very often per student, and it does not result in better schooling outcomes. And so when you say, if we could give every kid an iPad, would you give every kid an iPad? The question is not, if I had a replicator machine from Star Trek, would I give everybody an enormous amount of stuff? Sure, I would. Every resource is finite, every resource is limited, and you have to prioritize what are the outcomes that you seek in terms of the means with which you are seeking them. And so, again, I think that the question is I quibble with the premise of the question, which is that, again, the chief injustice when it comes to education on the list of injustices is lack of availability to technology, or that it's a funding problem. I just don't think that's the case.
Sure, and I can half agree with you there, but I don't think any amount of changes in the schools will create two-parent households. Right, we can't bring it.
I totally agree with you. So that's why I think that the fundamental educational problem is not, in fact, a schooling problem. I think that it pre-exists that.
Sure, but then I feel like this is kind of the conservative merry-go-round where it's like, what can we do to help with schools? So two of the things that I've seen, I think, that are usually brought up in research is one is air conditioning, that children in hotter environments just don't learn as well. And then the second one is access to food. So like kids that are given like a breakfast or a lunch that's provided at school, like increases educational outcomes. Now I agree that neither of these things might be determinative in like, well, 20% of kids were graduating, now 80% of kids are graduating, or these kids are all going, you know, from with their GEDs into the workforce, and now these kids are all suddenly becoming engineers. But in terms of where we can help, do you think there should be like some minimum threshold or minimum baseline of like, at the very least,
The science behind that conclusion that parents stay together because of the good material conditions is strong. Republicans clearly don't want to change material conditions. The only reason they bring the issue of two-parent households is literally just racism. That's it. Exactly. Racism, especially without like analyzing like different cultural differences even, but also claiming that there is no other reason as to why like black families are from broken households. Just a racist dog whistle.
every school should have a
I
non-leaky
sped it
gym.
up 125.
Or every school should have, if children can't afford lunch or breakfast, like some sort of food provided, or every school should have these like baseline things.
So again, I'm going to quibble with the premise of the question, because I think that when it comes to, for example, food insecurity, school food programs, again, you can always pour money into any program and at the margins create change. I mean, there's no doubt that pouring money onto anything will create change in a marginal way. The question is, how large is the margin and how big is the movement?
Yeah. There's a finite amount of resources, right, Ben? That's why you just can't give them money, because I'm just trying to make it efficient, is what Ben is saying. How is he trying to make it efficient? Let me tell you something, okay? Here's why right-wingers are such fabulous. The notion that like Ben is this intellectual giant who's actually thinking critically on the matter is silly as fuck. From where I'm standing, from where I'm sitting and understanding what Ben Shapiro is saying, he is more insane than any anarchist I've ever met that thinks that we can kumbaya tickle party fucking, criminals. Okay? Why? Because he thinks that we can somehow force people to be locked into fucking marriages in a way that like won't cause genuine chaos, like regress on social liberties in a way where the government, he wants small government, unless it's literally arresting what? Moms and dads that actually want to get a divorce? Like, how are you going to do that? It's such a fucking idiotic way to try and solve this problem instead of looking at other comparable OECD nations and seeing what they've done. If we tomorrow looked at the Finnish model and decided we're going to do the exact same thing, you would see educational outcomes that were better immediately. More funding for schools and a more even way of developing schools would abso-fucking-lutely fix like half the issues. And before you say Hasan is unfortunately the dumbest guy here this time, please just simply tell me why you think that is the case instead of just saying that and making yourself feel smart, because that is what dumb guys do. I often find myself belittling people as well, but at least I back it up with why I'm belittling them. Okay?
Right. So the delta is what I'm looking at. And so I think that you're starting at a second order question, which is, what if we ignore what I would think are the big primary questions of education, namely family structure, value of education at home, how much you have parents who are capable or willing to help with homework, what are the incentive structures we can set up for a society that actually facilitate that, how local communities take ownership of their schools is a big one, right? All of these issues we're ignoring in favor of, say, air conditioning or lunch programs. And so in a vacuum, if you say air conditioning and lunch programs, sounds great in a vacuum. In terms of prioritization of values and cost structure, are those the things that I think are going to move the needle in a major way in terms of public policy?
By the way, this is precisely the reason why they're both on the same side of the coin, by the way. Like, that's why I said they're both neoliberals. Like, what is he saying? Like, we know what his like nefarious agenda is for Ben, like behind his statement, right? He wants like a theocratic style government, right? An authoritarian theocracy that upholds the principles of Judeo-Christianity, right? That's what he wants. He'll try to mask it and be like, oh, I actually just mean like we'll incentivize good things and not the bad. But that's what he's saying. That's what he wants. But when he's arguing for that position, instead of just saying straight up, I want Handmaid's Tale or whatever, he's being like, oh, well, it's about efficiency. It's just like we only have a finite amount of resources. We can't give iPads to every children. And I'm simply talking about like what's the most efficient way of using the limited amount of government resources we have. And if you don't have like a stable approach to this subject, you're gonna lose out. This is why like a lot of neoliberals on the leftist side or the liberal side oftentimes fail to combat these talking points and end up agreeing with people like this.
I do not. And in fact, I think that many of them end up being disproportionate wastes of money. I mean, I've talked before pretty controversially about the fact that an enormous amount of school lunch programs are thrown out. Like an enormous amount of that food ends up in the garbage can. Is there a better?
Dude, that's crazy. Pointing to the waste in school lunch programs in a way to like try to undermine one of the most important social programs is insane. It's yet again another instance where it is perfectly valid for private corporations to dump metric tons of shit in an effort to ensure that they still have a steady flow of profits, even though we have created an abundance of food in this country. But when schools throw out a marginal percentage of the food that they get, oh my God, we have to use that as a cudgel, as a way to say, we got to throw this entire program away. That is psychotic, okay? That is insane. We dump a shit ton more in the private sector, on the agricultural side, on all matter of like food development, selling, on the fucking retail side. That is so stupid. You would never make this argument for cutting waste if the government actually put together an initiative that said, hey, you can actually dump out the extra milk in an effort to ensure that there is like some level of scarcity so that your price points so that your price is adjusted, right? To maintain price stability, you're going to have to limit supply a little bit, which means wasting a shit ton of food. If someone were to actually advocate for that, Ben would lose his fucking mind. He would be like, that's communism. That's communism. But the moment that like a school is dumping out a little bit of their program, of their food program, we're talking about children, for the record, children getting food. Sometimes the most nutritious meal that millions of children eat is at school. There's a reason why during COVID, when schools stopped, schools still maintained their lunch programs. That's because millions of families are food insecure and hyper reliant on their public school lunches to deliver the most nutritious meal of the day for a child. Ridiculous.
better way to do that. If there is a better way to do it, then I'm perfectly willing to hear about that better way to do it. But it seems to me that one of the big flaws in the way that many people of the left approach government is, what if we hit every gnat with a hammer? And my question is, what if the gnat isn't even the problem? What if there's a much bigger substructure problem that needs to be solved in order to, if you're shifting deck chairs on the Titanic, sure, you can make the Titanic slightly more balanced because the deck chairs are slightly better oriented. But the real question is the water that's gaping into the Titanic, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. But again, I feel like we're on the conservative merry-go-round then of never wanting to address
That's
any
not a conservative merry-go-round. I can give you 10 ways.
Well, sure, but so like here would be the merry-go-round. I would say that like there's a minimum funding for schools that I think would help children. And then we go, well, the thing that would help them the most is two-parent households. And I go, okay, well, two-parent households actually aren't the problem. The issue is access to things like birth control so that people don't have children early on. And it's like, but the issue isn't actually birth control. The issue is actually you need a certain amount of money to move out early and to get married and then to have a two-parent household. So it's actually like economic opportunity.
No.
Well, it's not,
No, just two-parent households. That's
yeah,
it.
but like what are the
Don't
precursors
fuck
for
people
it?
before you...
No, just two-parent households. Okay, how do you do it then? The problem is you shouldn't actually ever ask him, like, how do you enforce that? Because then you're kind of conceding. You're giving him an opportunity to describe his like idiotic worldview. And Ben is a very skilled debater, and he will try to present his handmaiden tale as dystopia in like a relatively positive way.
You're married and have babies.
Sure.
Done.
That's great. We can say that and try to fight against, however many hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, but people will have sex and people will make babies.
And then they used to get married. The vast majority of people in this country with kids used to be married.
Notice how we moved away from school funding, by the way, and now they're talking about something completely irrelevant to that. Okay? It's over. School funding, a point that Destiny made that he absolutely should have nailed Ben Shapiro on. They've moved on. He got trapped in his fucking rabbit hole. Now he's talking about the boundaries of family values and marriage. Why are we talking about marriage when the subject matter is supposed to be on education?
The vast majority of people with kids in this country
Sure.
now are not married increasingly.
Mhm.
That
But
is
a lot of
obviously a
the-
societal change.
Yeah,
Something
true.
changed. It wasn't human evolution.
But a lot of those things in terms of resting on whether or not people get married have to do with financial decisions. Do you have the money?
People are worse off now.
I don't disagree with you, but you can't make it sound like the U.S. serves healthy food at schools because they simply don't. It's literal poison that looks like food. You want to know the fucking sad state of affairs, my friend? I know that. And yet that is still the most nutritious meal that a child has in millions of food insecure families. I know that. That's how bad the fucking situation is, dude. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, you know what's better? Which is better? No food or shit food? I know that. I know that, like, in a lot of these places, guys, I've shit on Amy Klobuchar personally for getting funded by, I believe it was a tomato lobby, to make ketchup appear as a vegetable on school lunches, to make pizza, to get pizza to be considered a vegetable on school lunches because it has enough like tomato sauce on it. Okay? Not ketchup, it was pizza and ketchup. So I know how fucked up the process is. I'm simply telling you that even then it is still more nutritious than nothing.
Now than they were 50, 60 years ago when the marriage rates were higher.
People are delaying the start of their careers because education is going to be increasingly important.
So in other words, people are richer now and they have more education now, and yet they're having more babies out of wedlock now because they're richer and have more education.
I'm saying that one of the biggest indicators for whether or not somebody's willing to get married is how much money both people are making if they can move out of their household. People don't tend to want to get married at 22 when they've just finished college, when they don't have the money to move out and they can't afford a house.
Because we have changed the moral status of marriage in the culture, meaning that everyone, poor, rich, and in between, used to get married. That is, by the way, a huge percentage of marriages in the United States used to be what they would call shotgun marriages, meaning that somebody knocked.
Dude, none of that is good. None of that is good for the health of society. None of that is good for like what women want. And also, it has nothing to do with education. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Somebody up, and because they did not want the baby to be born outside of a two-parent household, they would then get married.
Do we think that shotgun marriages, though, are a way to bring back equilibrium to education?
Yes.
That if we,
Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Do we
a
think
child
that-
deserves a mother and a father?
Sure,
Because that
but-
is the basis for all of this, including education.
do we think that shotgun marriages are, well, let's say this, do we think that that's a reasonable direction that society would ever take? Or is this like,
Yes, it was the reasonable direction for nearly all of modern history.
was, but history moves in one direction, right?
Why?
Because of time?
I mean, people don't think that's in what way is that?
And I don't think
It's like the point is it's completely lost. Like now they're talking about like the history of marriage in the United States of America. Ben is presenting shotgun marriages as a positive because like shotgun marriages used to happen. I suspect it's gonna be like shotgun marriages used to happen when someone knocked someone else up and they were forcibly married. And it's like, yeah, huge percentage, by the way. Shotgun marriages used to be 27% of marriages in 1974 and 7% of marriages since 2000, which, by the way, that doesn't mean the percentage of unmarried pregnant women who marry within 3 years of conception has fallen by half since the 1970s from 51% to 25%. The share of single pregnant women who cohabit by the time the child's birth rose from 8% in the 1970s to 28% today, while the share who married by the birth fell from 29 to 8. What does that mean? That means that a lot of people who have accidental pregnancies still usually are in the child's life. They just don't get shotgun married. Also, absolutely no one, I hope, would make an argument that the 1974 was a good fucking time. That 1974 was a good fucking time for women in general and in marriages. In the U.S., a shotgun wedding is when someone marries their favorite shotgun. Anyway, I got to point to something here. Not only is what he's saying wrong, right, as we found out, it has nothing to do with education. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a world where you're like, well, I have the perfect solution, okay? We're not funding the schools at all, but everyone's going to come from a two-parent household. Do you think that that would fix the educational outcomes? Are you fucking stupid? What are you saying? Will it make the child's life and the child's development better? Maybe. A good counter to this would be to simply ask Ben Shapiro, okay, what did education look like in 1974 when there were shotgun marriages happening? Was it better? Were Americans more educated in 1974? Are they more educated now, Ben? When are they more educated? Dumbass. The fuck's wrong with you? This has nothing to do with education. Ask him that question, Destiny. What the fuck are you doing? Too busy agreeing with him for some weird reason. We're trying to catch him on a weird tangent.
Think we've ever regressed social standards back to like, oh, well, let's go 100 years back and do things that, used to exist before.
It's weird. The entire left right now is arguing that we regress social standards by rejecting Roe versus Wade. So that's obviously not true.
Now he's saying Roe versus Wade. What the fuck? What does that have to do with education? What is going on? The left is trying to, oh my God. He's so good at just like saying incredibly annoying shit in the most smarmy way possible that like you have to respond to it. You have to respond to it because look, the reality is if I was sitting across from him and he said that shit, I would lose my mind too. He would 100% cause me to follow him down that rabbit hole if he just brought the dumbass fucking education point. Why? Because Destiny made a good point. Destiny had a strong point. He made the correct point about education. What did Ben Shapiro do as a more skilled debater? Take him on a fucking journey and slap him around on the boundaries of marriage. Gave him false talking points about like how shotgun marriages are good and also very commonplace when it's not the case. But you don't have that information to look up immediately in real time. So now you're fucking cooked. Okay. And then what is he talking about now? Roe v. Wade. These are all absolute fucking baits. Stay on message. Stay on fucking message.
The Roe versus Wade is not a social standard; it's a Supreme Court ruling. Number one. Number two, if you read the actual majority opinion on Roe v. Wade, we can see that socially we actually never made huge progress on how society viewed abortion. This has always been an incredibly divisive thing, right? Even that was, I think, part of Alito's writing on it was that things like gay marriage, for instance, we've kind of moved past and it's not really as debated anymore. But abortion was never a settled topic, despite Roe v. Wade.
The notion of the arc of history.
I saw this part where he was saying like it's divisive. Abortion is divisive. It's not fucking divisive. It's not. It's not a divisive issue at all. Not ridiculous to say that it's divisive.
Moves in one direction is belied by nearly all of the 20th century.
What do we mean by that?
I mean,
in terms of like women's rights, civil rights,
barbarism, communism, Nazism, all of that was a regression from what was happening at, for example, the beginning of the 19th century and the 20th century.
Now we're talking about Nazism and communism being regressions. Oh my Lord.
What way?
Nazism and communism weren't a regression from what was going on in 1905?
These are, in terms of like communism being a regression, for instance, I'm not a communist, but like the industrialization of the Soviet Union happened under a communist society. The industrialization.
Murder of tens of millions of people.
Yeah,
I consider that a regression. A moral regression, which is what we.
Oh my God, dude. This is why you need to be a little bit more fucking educated, okay? He's a fascist. Him bringing up Nazi Germany as a moral regression is an awesome point. What do you say in that situation? You turn around and go, yeah, that's exactly the kind of moral regression you're advocating for in the United States of America when you want to have these like insane regressions on culture and on civil society. And as far as the moral regression of the USSR, that is an absolutely psychopathic thing to fucking mention when you got someone like Lenin. And all of the many advancements that the USSR put forward in terms of educating women some of which the impact you still see to this day in post-Soviet fucking nations, by the way, educating women, ensuring that women were in the fucking workplace. Like, there are so many instances where the USSR was way above, way ahead of social progress than the United States of America or their Western counterparts. That's ridiculous. Okay? They're just fucking falling into the classic, like, USSR bad, Stalin killed 7 guerrillian people trap, which, by the way, there were plenty of issues in the USSR. But you have to look at what the USSR did in comparison to what came before it. That's insane. That is still absolutely social progress in the USSR. Dumbest argument Ben Shapiro could have made in this circumstance. Okay? 1, the USSR, infinitely more socially progressive than Tsarist Russia. That's number 1. Okay? Like, the quick question to Ben is, okay, you brought up the USSR. Do you think that, like, I don't know, Jewish people are better off in the USSR, where there were certainly issues for Jewish people, like Doctor's Plot or whatever, but, like, do you think that that was better than what came before it? Non-stop pogroms? Which one do you think was better? Why are you bringing up the USSR as a point of social regress while simultaneously talking about Nazi Germany as a point of social regress when your worldview aligns with Nazi Germany? Anyway, by the way, while I talked about all this shit, you know what we're not talking about? Motherfucking education! What happened? Where is education in this conversation? We just moved so far away. He brought up the right points. Ben couldn't argue against them, and he just fucking whipped them around like a bitch boy on so many different tangents. This is the problem with debates, chat. That if you are against a skilled orator, a skilled interlocutor, they can just make short work of you, even if they're in the wrong. Destiny's side on the education conversation was correct. But Ben is now bringing him down this, like, weird fucking ladder, step by step, and just slapping him around, and they're now agreeing with one another on, like, the USSR or whatever, some dumb shit. Also, Lex should have probably done a better job of moderating this debate. Let's be fucking real. That's crazy that they're on, like, 11 different tangents at this point. How are you not moderating? Ben is basically stating that women shouldn't be able to make decisions about their lives. A huge reason why the amount of women aren't forcing the shotgun marriages anymore. Women nowadays have more freedom to advocate for themselves, as that was seen as a taboo in the 70s. This can be shown by divorce rates. Yeah, exactly.
We are talking about now moral regression. And you're suggesting that moral regression, I wouldn't term a return to traditional values in moral regression. You would. But your suggestion is that history only moves in one direction. And I'm suggesting that history does not only move in one direction. It tends to move actually back and forth.
Sure. I don't think that all of history moves in one direction. There are going to be wars. There are going to be times of peace. I think in general, we're more peaceful now than we have been in the past. But I think when we look at the way that people live their lives, I think that we tend to move in a certain direction socially. So when it comes to things like racism, or when it comes to things like slavery or women's rights, I think that there are 2 huge things that probably aren't.
Yeah, Destiny isn't even shistling properly. Didn't even mention how Hitler praised the U.S. in the early 20th century for their eugenics programs. Or the very obvious fucking take here is immediately turning around and being like, Ben, the social regress of Nazi Germany didn't just stop at the wholesale execution of Jews, okay? The social regress of Nazi Germany was actually identical values that you advocate for. Transphobia, okay? Stopping abortions, criminalizing abortions. Like, these are fundamental principles to make sure that the folk in Germany were able to consistently increase their population size. The idea that Ben is so far removed from Nazi Germany is so ridiculous. You hate unions, you hate communists and socialists, you want to criminalize abortion. It's so funny when these guys go, actually, the Nazis actually wanted abortions. Like, it's like, no, they didn't. Not for white people. It was criminal for white people. The fuck are you talking about?
Changing in the US, and one is access to contraception, and one is women working jobs. I think that these 2 things are probably huge things that are moving us off of shotgun marriages or getting married very early on. And I don't see do you think that those 2 things are going to change fundamentally?
First of all, what the data tend to show is that actually more highly educated people, as you were saying, tend to get married more. So if the idea is that women getting an education somehow throws them off marriage, it's the opposite. Usually
but those
women
women
are not educated.
But those women aren't getting shotgun marriages. Those women aren't having children.
Yeah, but now you're shifting the topic. My topic was how to get more people married. And what I'm and then you suggested that higher levels of education are delaying marriage and making it less probable. And what I'm telling you, because this is what the data suggests, is that actually as you raise up the educational ladder, people tend to be married more than they are lower down on the educational ladder. If you're a high school graduate, you're less likely to be married than if you're a postdoc.
I agree with you, but that's because one of the biggest precursors to getting married is having like a level of economic stability. So as people get more educated, they obtain this economic stability, and then they're in a more comfortable position to explore more serious
There's
relationships.
another confound there. I mean, the confound is that people in stable marriages tend to be the children of stable marriages. And there's only one way to break that cycle, which is to create a stable marriage. And that is something that is in everyone's hands. Again, this notion that it is somehow an unbreakable, unshatterable barrier to get
Yeah, I love that his argument is the realistic one, which is somehow making sure that we just, get married more and stay in marriages. That's nice, man. That's the way to solve education for sure. Just cut school funding entirely and force people to stay in marriages, and boom, problem solved. That's how they do it in Sweden, where they did try to privatize education, found out that it actually led to tremendously bad results, immediately stopped the program, dead in its fucking tracks. So odd that all of the comparable OECD nations have significantly better educational outcomes, despite the fact that, many of them don't even allow for private education or don't have any of this like charter school bullshit. And there is even funding and better labor protections for teachers, Not true. We have private schools. No, in Sweden, they tried to do a similar program to the Democrats in the 90s in the United States of America, revert some of the funding from public education and public institutions to private institutions in Sweden. They quickly dropped the program. They still have private schools in Sweden, but it's, of course, going to always happen because you have neoliberal capitalists that are advocating. But they very quickly changed, if I recall correctly, the charter process that they had, the public to private substitution program that they had. Yes, there's a big difference between private schools and charter schools. Probably a late point, but what about charter schools? Charter schools are dog shit. Charter schools are awful. It's just a way to undermine teachers' unions. They are unaccountable. They're unaccountable to the same regulatory body. They take away funds from public education. It's really awful. And the Democratic Party absolutely played a role in pushing for charter schools, and still does to a certain degree. Yeah, charter schools get worse outcomes per dollar. Also, charter schools, because they're unaccountable and not really regulated by local governments, sometimes they just straight up end. Like they just close up, just close down, Donda Academy style.
Get married and have kids. I don't understand where this is coming from. Why is that such a challenge?
I don't think it's unbreakable or unshatterable. The initial point was for school, if we can provide a minimum level of educational stuff for children, that'd probably be good. But when we retreat back to, well, it has to be the families that are fixed first, fixing families is a multivariate problem that has so many different.
I am fine within my local community. We all vote. Again, I've suggested that there's a difference between local community and federal. I'm fine with my local community voting for school lunches or air conditioning or whatever it is that we all agree to do, because the more local you get, the more homogeneity you get in terms of interest, and the more interest you have in your neighbors. All that's
This is not what I'm talking about at all. Sweden's school minister declares free school system a failure. Lotta Edholm aims to limit the profit-making ability of free scholar in her plans for education reform, pledging the biggest shakeup in 30 years, calling the question a model in which profit-making companies run state education. This is a relatively new version of what I'm talking about. This happened before. This is the second. I guess this is like they are now talking about it again, but this happened a couple years prior as well, when they first brought it up. Yeah, incentivizing profit in schooling is a terrible idea. Biden lost Democratic New Hampshire presidential primary to fill in the blank. How damned embarrassing. I don't believe that. It's on Newsmax, dog. Come on. I mean, not that it matters.
That's fine. I'm part of a very, very solid community. In our community, we give to each other. We have minimum standards of helping one another. All that's wonderful. When it comes to the actual problem of education, what I object to in the political sphere, and this happens all the time, is everybody is arguing on top of the iceberg about how we can move the needle 0.5 percentage points, as opposed to the entire iceberg melting beneath them. And we just ignore that. And we pretend that that's just,
Yeah, the entire iceberg melting beneath the education is the education problem is 2-parent households.
Sort of the natural consequence of thing. The arc of history suggests that people are never going to get married again. Well, I mean, actually, what the arc of history suggests, realistically speaking, is that the people who are not getting married are not going to be having kids. And what it also suggests, the people who are married are going to be having kids. And so the demographic profile actually over time is rather going to shift toward people who are having lots and lots of kids. I'm married. I have 4 kids. Everyone in my community is
Yeah,
married.
this is what I
That's
was
like minimum
talking about.
buy-in in my community is 4 kids. Okay, and so what's happening actually in terms of demographics is that the people who are more religious and getting married are having more kids. And so if you're talking about the arc of history shifting toward marriage, I would suggest that actually demographically over time, long periods of time, not over one generation, over long periods of time, the only cure for low birth rate is going to be the people who get married and have lots of kids.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that, but I'm just saying that again on the
Why? Why don't you disagree with any of that? The fuck's he talking about? Who gives a shit about the arc of history as it pertains to fucking marriages and two-parent households? I'm losing my mind. And having more kids. Bro, this is about education, dude. What is going on? You let him fucking dominate the conversation for the entire process when you are correct. You are on the right side of the argument. This is what I mean. Ben knows Destiny's on the right side of this argument, okay? And it took him literally nothing, absolutely nothing to just like move the conversation and dance around the issue and shift his focus to like the arc of justice and social progress for like fucking 20 minutes. That's crazy.
I know you're upset when I bring up the term merry-go-round. I think that there are good conversations to be had about people getting married because stable families produce stable children that are less likely to commit crime, that are more likely to go to school.
Isn't Ben technically on the right side? Fuck no, Ben's not on the right side. What the fuck are you talking about? They're both like, one is sometimes center left, other times really far right, depending on what fucking issue you're talking about. This one is completely far right on everything, okay?
More likely productive members of society, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to disagree with you on any of that. All of that is true. It's just frustrating that sometimes when you bring up any problem, all of it will circle back to other things that makes it seem like we can't make any progress in any area.
Destiny's on the left? No, he's not. He's not. Like, come
Without
on.
like fixing
In what
something.
way?
that's
I mean, I
fundamental.
literally just told you that on the local level, I'm fine for people voting for air
Yeah, but so
conditioning.
for instance, on the local level, so for school funding is done, I think, generally per district. So what do you do when you have poor districts that can't afford air conditioner for their schools?
I mean, the idea there would be that presumably if the society, meaning the state, and I generally don't mean the federal state, I mean like the state of California, for example, decides that everybody ought to have air conditioning, people will vote for air conditioning, and that's perfectly legal. And I don't think there's anything morally objectionable about that per se.
Cool.
I also don't think that that's going to heal anything remotely like the central problem.
Sure,
and I think that what tends to happen in terms of government is people love arguing about the problems that can be solved by opening a wallet, and nobody likes to solve a problem by, you know, closing their sex life to one person, for example, or having kids within a stable religious community, like the things that actually build society. I'm fine with arguing about each of these policies, and whether we apply them or not is a matter generally of pragmatism, not morality. It's a matter of incentive structures, not per se morality, because incentive structures do have moral underpinnings. There's such a thing as, for example, if you're going to use a welfare program, you have to decide how effective it is, to what crowd it applies, where the cutoffs are. Does it disincentivize work? Does it not? All of these are pragmatic concerns. But on a moral level, the generalized objection that I have to people on the left side of the aisle is that they like to focus in these conversations. Very often it feels as though it's a conversation with people who are drunk searching under the lamp for their keys. The problems they want to look.
Yeah, now they're going to get on a collective fuckfest of like dunking on this imaginary liberal, which they will, of course, cast as like, I assume, the progressive side of this conversation, as pie in the sky idealists who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and then circle jerk on how smart and intelligent their solutions are. When Ben's fucking solution is psychotic, Destiny at least like brought up good points and completely fucking dropped them.
At are the problems that are solvable by government. And then all the problems they don't want to look at, which are the actual giant monsters lurking in the dark and not particularly solvable by government, are the ones they want to ignore and assume are just the natural state of things. And I don't think that's correct at all.
And I 1,000,000,000% agree. And then obviously my criticism for the conservative side is the exact opposite, where there are parts where government could remedy some issues. For instance, children having sex with each other and producing other children out of wedlock. Like sometimes having after school programs is nice to prevent that. Like I didn't have time for these things when I was in school. I was doing football practice. I was doing cross country practice. I went in early for a band, I agree with you that sometimes people only focus on one end of the problem. I hate to be that guy, but as somebody that, have you ever watched The Wire?
Sure.
I'm not going to cite The Wire as a real life example, but like obviously there's only so much you can do in a school when the children coming in are so beyond destroyed because of the family life and everything prior to them even getting to school that day. So I agree. Government is not like the solution to broken families. That would never be the case.
And it's actually not the solution to education, depending on the kind of solutions that you're talking about. Some solutions, yes. Some solutions, no.
Yeah. So the only thing I'm looking at is, as I said earlier, just like these minimum threshold things.
What are the solutions of the government? What is a government intervention that Ben thinks is appropriate? Stop agreeing with him. What the fuck? Stop agreeing with him. What are the solutions? He's just fucking, dude. He just keeps saying, oh, some yes, some no. You're not pinning him down at all. If this was, okay, if Destiny was sitting across from some like 18-year-old queer teenager furry who's like talking about revolution now on Twitter, okay, he would be literally doing everything in his might while simultaneously holding back slurs to pin this person down on their fucking positions. But when it's actually Big Dick Daddy Shapiro, He can't just turn around and be like, let's explore the logical boundaries of your worldview. What the fuck are you doing? You got all the smoke for some random fucking furry person from your Discord that you pulled out, but you don't got shit for Ben Shapiro? This motherfucker's in charge of the Daily Wire. I'm losing it a little bit. Come on, dude. Have you considered that Destiny may want a contract with the Daily Wire? That's crazy. Pin him down. Ask him a fucking question. I've debated this dude many times in the past, okay? He is the best at disingenuously framing his interlocutor's argument to like try and lock them into this like logical conundrum. But when it comes to Ben, he's just not even remotely touching it. It blows my mind, okay? This is the community that still claims like Hasan doesn't believe that you should ever call the cops. Hasan is like pro fucking dude, whatever. There's so many insane shit that they lie about. But like, what's going on? You don't got the same smoke for Ben Shapiro? I don't understand it. Like, I'm expecting something from a person who I do think is a good debater.
It's like, where can government make? Because you mentioned marginal, which I think is a really good way to look at things. Like marginal costs and marginal.
It's just all going to be like, I mean, it's great if you want to like target the centrist idiots who are just going to be like, wow, it's so wonderful that these two guys are like having a normal conversation. I can't, there's nothing so far for any kind of like intellectual blood sport. There's nothing going on as far as like disagreement or good disagreements. It's very cucked, in my opinion.
Utility to things where the first $1,000 per student you spend might give you a huge return, but the extra $20,000 after.
Yeah, I think these are all pragmatic discussions.
Sure, of
and
course. Okay.
actually, this is what we used to hash out in legislatures before they turned into platforms for people grandstanding. But yes,
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
As we descend,
Well, they wonderfully agreed that the solution to education is, two-parent households. 20 minutes in and you have to bring up a hypothetical incest or bestiality situation to really explore the boundary of your moral consistency. Yeah, I mean, look, that's a joke, obviously, even though he does do that regularly. But the problem is, and I know Destiny Dick Riders are going to turn around and be like, he's actually being quite good faith here. Okay, look to who he's being bad faith to then in his conversations, and look to who he declares to be good faith. And then think, if you are truly a progressive, if you are a champion of progressive values, many people in Destiny's community think they are, okay, who do you think is more damaging to both public discourse and who do you think has more power? Someone like Ben Shapiro or a random YouTuber that Destiny has drama with because they were hooking up or something and now they hate one another? Who do you think holds the keys to the power? Some hammer and sickle Twitter person that has been annoying Destiny, or motherfucking Daily Wire's very own Ben Shapiro? Why is he being so good faith to Ben Shapiro but constantly losing his fucking mind, flying off the handle on every argument that he has with supposedly like, very important left-wing thinkers or whatever?
from the heavens of philosophical discussion of conservatism and liberalism, let's go.
By the way, you know who's not holding good faith in this conversation? Ben isn't. That's the other problem. Okay? Ben's not good faith. Ben very clearly dominated that first segment. How did he dominate that first segment? By deviating away from the main point that Destiny had originally, which was correct. That's crazy. And now it's like a slobber fest. He just yapped and moved the conversation so perfectly away from the major point of contention. Okay?
The pragmatic muck of politics. Trump versus Biden. Between the two of them, who was in their first term the better president? And thus, who should win if the two of them are, in fact, our choices?
Yeah, he deviated every single time. And then the one time Destiny did it, he said, you're changing the subject, which was funny because Destiny was following the subject that Ben had changed the conversation to. Jesus Christ.
Second term of 2024. Ben?
Hasan, I genuinely don't understand why you said Destiny was good at debating. This is dog shit. Well, he's good at debating when he wants to be, because you should be bad faith. If you want to be good at debating, you're going to be bad faith. I think that much of the rhetoric, much of the rhetorical tools that apply in debates revolve around basically taking logical fallacies that would get you punished in a debate club style scenario and justifying it by claiming that it's actually hyper logical to ask these questions. Like rationalizing logical fallacies is how you win debates, because most people are stupid. Okay. Most debate watchers are stupid. I'm stupid. Ben's not very intelligent, and neither is Destiny. So as stupid people, we all find ourselves enamored by logical fallacies, whataboutism. Like, whatever you can do, whatever deflection you can use in that circumstance is very effective, as Ben demonstrated right here. He knew that he didn't have a strong point, so he deflected away to an area where he thinks he has a stronger point, which is family fucking values. So, I don't know. I just think that, yeah, everyone is stupid. Some are stupider than others. Exactly. I'm a D-man dick rider and I come in peace. When would you say he's been bad faith to someone on the left? Brother, whose chat do you think you're in? Even DGGers admit that Destiny, when it comes to me, has a soft spot where he just can't fucking control his emotions and loses his mind. They even fantasize about me doing the same thing to him sometimes in an effort to justify it. But if you're a hardcore D-man dick rider, you would probably recognize that. Destiny is very bad faith when it comes to debating people that he truly wants to like ritualistically humiliate. And by that I mean like people who really he really considers to be his like ideological opponents. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with ideology at all and everything to do with like the vibes. Okay? That's it. He likes the thrill of the debate, I guess. Just like I like the thrill of the top of the hour ad break and debating you. Can you give an example? Yes. He, for example, very clearly, knowing full well that it was false, repeated the narrative that I had like gone to a child sex trafficking brothel or some shit. He knew that that wasn't real, but he still said it. Okay? And often, or any number of different instances where he will like, when I get brought up, he just like has a barrage of shit that is readily available that he's just like his brain shuts off into, that he just spits out. That's not a real argument. You know what I mean? Like, see? And then his followers will say, not true. He defended you on that law. Brother, he didn't defend me. He said it. And then his own community started yelling at him for spreading a false rumor. And then he turned around and probably fucking tried to, you know, cover his ass a little bit. Also recently, one of his most incredible takedowns was calling me a fucking Turkish loser, or that time when he said I should go back to my own country, or all this shit. You know what I mean? Come on, guys. There's a lot of old Destiny fans in this community still that are fans of mine from way back in the day. Yeah. Why did Destiny barely bring up sex education and birth control's impact on mitigating one-parent households? That seems far more reasonable than bringing back shotgun marriages with a ridiculously intangible goal of repairing morality or some shit. Also, abortion is obviously huge in this regard, but you know Ben would piss his pants. Exactly. Yeah. They're just trying to get as many moments for D to respond, react to. They don't need the actual fucking examples, my guy. You know better. That's true. You're right. Listen, it's just like it's a spiteful ex situation, okay? It's like having a fucking crazy ex-girlfriend that stalks you nonstop. Except in this circumstance, he's been able to get his cult-like following to also follow along and like rationalize it, and makes a tidy little profit off of it too every time he pops off. It's farming. It is what it is. But let's make no mistake. It's not like some real political battle. That's why the comparison between me and Ben Shapiro don't fit the bill. Because Ben Shapiro is someone who I believe is relatively powerful in American political discourse. Okay?
Sure. So in terms of actual job performance, you have to separate it into a few categories. In terms of actual performance in foreign policy, I think Trump's foreign policy record is significantly better than Biden's, the world being on fire right now.
It's okay, though. Destiny's fans will look at this interview and go, he's not being a pushover here and like allowing Ben to make him jump through hoops, and actually is like doing incredible bridge building exercises.
Being a fairly good example of that. And we can get into each aspect of the world being on fire and where the incentive structures came from and how all of that happened in a moment. When it comes to the economy, I think that Trump's economic record was better than Biden's. Doesn't mean he didn't overspend. He did. He wildly overspent. But he also had a very solid record of job creation. A huge percentage of the gains in the economy went to people on the lower end of the economic spectrum. Actually, the gross income to the average American was about $6,000 during his term. The unemployment rates were very, very low before COVID. You know, I think that you almost have to separate the Trump administration into sort of before COVID and during COVID, because COVID obviously is sort of a black swan event, the most signal change in politics in our lifetime. And so, you know, governance during COVID is almost its own category, which we can discuss. But, you know, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of domestic policy, I think that Trump was significantly better than Biden has been. And that's on the upside for Trump. On the downside for Biden, obviously you're talking 40-year highs in inflation. You're talking about savings being eaten away. You're talking about everything being 20 to 30% more expensive. You're talking about massive increases to the deficit, even at a rate that was unknown under Trump. The deficit under Trump raised by about a little under $1 trillion every year up until 2020. Again, 2020 was COVID year, so everybody decided that we're going to fire hose money at things. But then Joe Biden continued to fire hose money at things in 21, 22, and 23. That obviously is, in my opinion, bad economic policy. And then you get to the rhetoric, and you get to the stuff that Donald Trump says. And as I've said before, my view is that on Donald Trump's epitaph, on his gravestone, it will say Donald Trump. He said a lot of shit. I think that Donald Trump does say a lot of things. I think that that is basically baked into the cake, which is why everyone who's bewildered by the polls is ignoring human nature, which is at the beginning, when you see something very shocking, it's very shocking. And then if you see it over and over and over and over for years on end, it is no longer shocking. It is just part of the background noise, like tinnitus. It just becomes, something that your brain adjusts for. And so do I like a lot of Donald Trump's rhetoric? No, and I never have. Do I think that that is dispositive as to his presidency? No, I do not. When it comes to Biden, again, I think he's underperforming economically. I think that his foreign policy has been really a problem. Even the things I think he's done right are, I think, band-aids for things that he created by doing wrong. And when it comes to his own rhetoric, you can argue that it's grading on a curve because Trump was coming in with such wild rhetoric that just a maintenance of that wild rhetoric doesn't really change.
I don't know why we never factor in Donald Trump's ginormous tax cuts that were before COVID into the conversation about inflation. Like, how is that not a factor at all? It's one of the, at least in the opposite direction, tax hikes are a deflationary mechanism at a time when record high profits are occurring. It is like the only fiscal policy that you can push for beyond, like, I guess, price controls. And yet Donald Trump literally fucking did tax cuts. That absolutely factored into inflation beyond the subsidies that he's talking about, which many of which went to, the PPP and whatnot. But let's see.
For Biden, he came in the same way that Obama did, on this sort of soaring rhetoric of American unity. I'm the president for all. Like, Trump came in, he's like, listen, I'm the president for what I am, and I'm going to say the things I want to say. I'm going to be on the toilet, I'm tweeting. And we're like, okay, so that's what it is. With Biden, he came in with, I'm a president for all Americans. I'm trying to unify everybody, and that pretty quickly broke down into a lot of oppositional language about his political opponents in particular. And it's up to lump.
God, I fucking hate conservatives so much to my very soul. Jesus Christ, nothing whips me back into shape. Sure, I despise liberals who love wars and stuff, but God damn, they're such pathetic little losers. Just like, man, Joe Biden came into office and said he was going to be the president for everybody, and he dealt with Mitch McConnell like a real reasonable man, but also simultaneously, sometimes he said, these MAGA Republicans are going too far. It's like, bitch, you say that too, Ben, you fucking asshole. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. I can't believe that's your main, that's the main problem you have, is Biden's rhetoric, that he was too mean to the Republicans. What do you want him to do? If Biden was too mean to Republicans, what the fuck is Trump? Biden wasn't as mean to Republicans as Trump was. He literally went to New Hampshire the other day and called it a fucking drug-infested shithole. What are you talking about? He'll go to West Virginia and be like, you guys don't wash yourselves, you fucking idiots. And everyone's like, hell yeah, sir. I haven't showered in weeks because I don't have running water. And he's like, that's right, you fucking poor moron. Vote for me. Trump is meaner to the Republican base than fucking Joe Biden is to Republicans across the board. And you're over here making this comparison? Get the fuck out of here. That's such a dumb thing to say.
In, for example, huge swaths of the conservative movement with the people who participated, for example, in January 6th or who are fans of January 6th. The sort of lumping in of everybody into MAGA Republicans who wasn't personally signed on to an infrastructure bill with him. That sort of stuff, I think, has been truly terrible. I thought his Philadelphia speech was truly terrible. And again, I think that you do have the problem of he is no longer capable of, certainly rhetorically, unifying.
Yeah, dude, you're right. Yeah, you're right, man. Totally. Donald Trump, he just says stuff. Whatever. Don't think about it any further than that, okay? Joe Biden, on the other hand, he says that at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break and I forgot to run it, so I'm running it now, okay? And that's unacceptable. No. Donald Trump, he just says stuff and it's annoying. Who cares? Joe Biden, on the other hand, guys, he says scary things, like people that don't want to sign on to a totally reasonable infrastructure spending bill are insane, even though those very same Republicans will vote against it and then go back to their own fucking town halls and act like they brought money back home, like the psychopathic assholes that they are, knowing full well that their dumbass fucking hog voters are not going to know the reality of the situation. Anyway, Bisexual icon JF Gay. Thank you for the 10 gifted subs. And Abigene 19, thank you for the 5 gifted subs.
In the country, when every speech from him feels like watching Nick Wallenda walk across a volcano on a tightrope. And it really is like you're just sort of waiting for him to fall. I mean, it's sad to say. I mean, the other day he was speaking for what was in effect his campaign kickoff, and this is in Valley Forge. And I mean, Jill rushed up there like off the as soon as he was done. Jill rushed up there, like she'd been shot out of a cannon to come and try and guide him away so he didn't become the Shane Gillis Roomba. And that's not really let's put it this way: it does not quiet the soul to watch Joe Biden rhetorically. Again, that's a different problem than Trump's problem, but that's my analysis.
This is one of the areas where we get into this. I don't understand if there's like brain breaking happening or what's going on. I don't know what world we can ever live in where we say that Trump is less divisive for the country than Biden. I think it is so patently obvious. Trump is so divisive. Like, not only does Trump make an enemy out of every person in the opposition party,
I hate the argument about like who's more divisive. It doesn't matter, okay? Trump is still more divisive, obviously, but it doesn't fucking matter. It's such a dumb argument, dude. If you're going to talk about Trump versus Biden, Jesus Christ, it's American politics. They're aligned on a lot more of the issues than they're actually in disagreement over. People like Ben Shapiro heighten those contradictions regularly in an effort to make it seem as though there's really a lot of deviation from the norm. And even if you're going to argue on those boundaries, like, it's just all optics. It's just like, it's such a shallow conversation to have. It's a conversation that just begins and ends on optics for no fucking
makes an
reason.
enemy out of his own party and every single person around him. Like, we all watched him bully, Jeff Sessions. We all watched him bully his own party on Twitter. We all watched like all of these people walk away from him. Even recently, I think, his the Secretary of Defense Esper and John Kelly, the Chief of Staff, were saying, I think Trump is a threat to democracy. You got all of his prior people that were around him, some of his closest allies. You've got Bill Barr that won't co-sign a single thing that he says. You've got all these people that he used to work with that all say Trump is a horrible, evil person. He is ineffective as a leader. He doesn't accomplish anything, and he didn't. To say that Biden has failed at bipartisanship when we've got
That's also wrong. Donald Trump. This is something that I actually, this is literally something that I debated Destiny on. All the Destiny heads that are watching right now, if you want to see a fucking debate daddy, if you want to see your debate daddy get fucking owned on this, I literally argued with Destiny on this where I said Trump is a very successful Republican. Something I stand on to this day, something that I fucking absolutely owned him on as well. If you want to go fucking watch a debate on those boundaries, it's somewhere on my YouTube. I don't remember. It's like fucking so many years ago. But Donald Trump is a phenomenally successful Republican. If anything, the Republican Party is currently experiencing whiplash because they're victims of his success. Okay? Donald Trump is not unsuccessful at all. He was profoundly successful for Republican Party policies. He packed the courts. He destroyed the regulatory agencies. He offered fat tax cuts for no fucking reason at a time when there was no necessity for it. 3 Supreme Court justices, luck or not, doesn't matter. He did that shit. Okay? So the idea that he's not a successful Republican. By the way, hold on, where is it? Oh, why don't you debate him instead of talking about this debate from years ago? Well, it's wonderful because Lefty McLefterson very quickly proved exactly why I don't fucking debate most of these people in the debate Lord Spear. Because their followers come in here for months on end and keep repeating shit like Hamas Piker. Like, how am I? Because he doesn't actually fucking deal with people that he considers to be on the left as like, good faith people. That's why his entire community thinks I'm pro-Russia across the board and spread that far and wide. Okay? Motherfuckers are still coming in here and saying the most Islamophobic bullshit. That's the reason. Because I'm getting fucking... does that hurt your feelings? Just wipe those tears away with millions, bro? First of all, that's not a good counter, brother. And secondly, okay, all right, you could just fucking be as racist as you want to LeBron James then. He's rich, so just go call him the N-word? Like, what do you mean? What kind of fucking argument is this, dumbass? Also, you're proving the point I'm making because it's not the actual debate itself. It basically turns into like that community's most ridiculous diehard loyalists coming in here and like relentlessly trying to fucking derail whatever I'm trying to do next. There you go. Soy boy. Like it's fucking 4chan time. Come on, dude.
gotten the CHIPS Act, we've gotten the IRA, we've gotten the ARP, we've gotten the bipartisan infrastructure bill, when we've got like all this major legislation that is working in this historically divided Congress, as opposed to Trump that got us tax cuts and deficit spending. I don't understand where we ever are in this world where Biden is somehow more divisive than Trump. Even the speeches that Ben is bringing up, they always bring up. I remember that one. I think we might have even done it on our episode. The one speech that Biden gave, where at one point the the background is red, and
That's the Philly speech I referenced.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's over. This is the end." And then meanwhile, you got Donald Trump, coming into office saying things like, "If you burn the flag, you should have your citizenship revoked," or talking about MSDNC, that I'm going to investigate every single one of these media organizations for corruptness. I'm going to open the libel and defamation laws. I'm going to take all of these guys to court. You've got this weird Project 2025 stuff where. Is it John Paschal, I think, is talking about, we're gonna investigate all of these people and we're gonna try to throw crimes at all these people. Trump is like the most divisive president I think we've ever had.
If you stay in your own isolated box, you don't really engage in the whole discourse is my thing, but I don't. See, this is the reason, because the community that like debate lords foster, create is like hyper toxic and very Reddit. What do I mean by this? Like, I'm trying to watch something that was going to be entertaining to you, right? You want to see what my commentary is. Maybe you can clip it and send it to Destiny, and then you guys can have fun with that later. There's like secondary market value to what I'm doing, but you want to fucking derail the conversation and just like latch on to like one thing that I said and immediately do the same thing that everyone on Twitter does. And it's so fucking annoying, and you guys hate it when it's done to you, but you love doing it yourself. Oh, I said I like pancakes. Whoa, it doesn't... Wow, why are you saying that you don't like fucking waffles? Now I'm going to fucking write a dissertation on that. And if you ever reply to me like the fucking dumbass that you are, I'm going to turn it around and then move on to a secondary point. It's not productive at all. You know what I mean? You just made up something, okay? You made something up. You said, I'm staying in my own isolated box. I don't do that. I collaborate regularly with a lot of people, okay? With a lot of people. I go and I debate people on television. I go and I debate people that have different opinions than me. But just because I'm not debating the one person that you want me to debate, you're like, oh, well, you're in your isolated box. That's not the truth. Do you understand? That's it. Come on.
In at least in my lifetime of being an American citizen, and the rhetoric from him is just, it's on a whole other level in terms of the demonization of political opponents. I mean, this is a guy that's known for giving his political opponents bad nicknames, right? Like, that's what Trump does. It's funny, but even as a resident of Florida,
Look, this is another good one. See, I think you supporting people, like, this is not a conversation. This is an accusation. I think you supporting people calling him Cuban slurs is pretty messed up. This accusation also has hidden premises inside of it, okay? What am I supposed to do? Address each individual faulty premise that you have inside of this accusation that you launched in here? One, I'm supporting people calling him Cuban slurs. What are the Cuban slurs? Now I have to talk about like gusano or whatever the fuck that means. That's a whole different can of worms and a totally specific discourse that is unfortunately not been able to launch and become like a real tangent, but people bring it up regardless. And then you say just because his parents were Cuban immigrants, you call them Cuban slurs, which is also ridiculous, okay? While simultaneously the community is calling me Hamas Piker, saying that I look like Osama bin Laden or behave like Osama bin Laden, saying that I'm like a fucking Islamist fundamentalist that defends terrorism. And it's the N-word saying community that aligns with Nazis regularly as long as it like belittles the left. I'm sorry, you have no moral leg to stand on. You know what I mean? You can't be fucking calling me an Islamic terrorist every goddamn day and then be like, well, I can't believe some members in your community say Gusano, and you said it's actually cringe to fucking say that to Destiny, but I'm still gonna act like you're constantly calling him a fucking Cuban slur. And then you finally recognize that it's not even a thing, so you go, at least you stopped allowing it now. You didn't make an argument at all. You just came in here to shit stir, clip it out of context, put it on LSF, brigade the shit out of it, and then have Destiny make 11 videos about how racist I am. And then some goddamn dumbass liberals will get suckered into going, you know what? Maybe this is kind of racist. I don't even understand. I'm voluntarily getting into this trap so that I can personally describe to you how irrational and illogical the way you're operating is, okay? It's just, you just made like 8 different things up. But it doesn't matter because this will move discourse on the other side no matter what. Do you understand? I mean, this is entirely unproductive. A lot of you guys personally see yourselves as like intellectual giants. You see yourself as like intellectual titans because you love testing your ideas. Okay? You love testing your ideas in the battleground. That's where ideas thrive. This is how we find the best ideas, by engaging in, the Socratic method or whatever. And then this is the outcome of your Socratic method, just a whole bunch of nonsensical shit that you made up that you're framing in a narrative way so you can clip it and ship it and then continue that tangent over and over again. That's it. This is why this is not even remotely interesting. I don't know why you think it's remotely interesting. I genuinely don't understand it, because the debate itself ultimately should be on the boundaries of what Destiny believes and what Ben Shapiro believes. If you have better talking points and if you have better opinions, you should be able to fucking destroy Ben Shapiro, right? And I want Destiny to do that. I know he's capable of doing that.
Had another natural disaster, do you think Trump would withhold aid? Because you had, I think that was one of the few nice things that DeSantis actually said about Biden, was that like, hey, listen, when the buildings collapsed in, I think that was in Miami Beach, that, for the hurricane stuff, that Biden was there. He was saying, if you guys need aid, however many billions, you can have it. Meanwhile, Trump, I think, was threatening to withhold federal funding from blue states that wouldn't, I think it had to do with the National Guard stuff, the deployment of the National Guard, that they weren't like doing enough for the riots. And Trump was threatening to withhold aid from some of these blue states. Yeah, Trump is literally the most divisive person in the world. I don't see how on any metric he is ever succeeding in the divisive category. In terms of the economy, I do think it's funny that Republicans are very keen to say that, like, well, we can't really grade Trump, post-COVID, because obviously COVID messed everything up, which is fair. But pre-COVID, what did Trump do? Yeah, he did deficit spending, tax cuts. He presided over historic low interest rates and an economy that was already like blazing past the final years of Obama. We were posting all-time highs in all the stock markets in 2013 onwards. Unemployment rates were falling. Now under Biden, unemployment rates are even lower than they were under Trump. But it sucks that for Trump, we can say, well, we can't really hold him accountable for 2020. That was COVID. Well, all we have for Biden is post-COVID. We don't have any pre-COVID Biden, economy. And it was the same thing for Obama too, coming in right after the housing collapse as well. And it sucks that Republicans are able to walk out of office, having burned the entire American society to the ground economically. And now we've got to try to evaluate, okay, well, what did Obama do during his first 2 to 3 to 4 years, just trying to recover from where the housing crash left it? And then we look at Biden now, who's trying to recover from COVID, and now we're grading him on a totally different scale than what Trump is being graded on. Yeah, that sucks, I think.
We can comment on the foreign policy?
On the foreign policy, I'm going to be honest, I am very liberal. I'm very not progressive. I'll probably come off as more hawkish than others because I'm not a big fan of this, which also, if Ben agrees, like, I think people like Trump are going to be the most dovish isolationist people ever. They don't want to do anything internationally. They just want to, protect America, be at home, protect our economy, don't do anything internationally, which is why he was constantly undermining NATO and constantly, attacking all of the European Union and, cheering on the UK for Brexiting away from the EU. I think, that being said, I think that Biden has done a phenomenal job when it comes to foreign policy. I think that the coalition building was so important for Ukraine, Russia, and I'm so happy that he decided to go to our European allies and our NATO allies and try to build a coalition of people to help Ukraine. So
okay, first of all, that was Vladimir Putin's gift to Joe Biden. Okay, so I don't know about Biden doing that. You know who thinks Biden is responsible for Russia invading Ukraine? People who push Z. I'm just saying.
that wasn't only the United States. Personally, especially after doing a whole bunch of research, I do tend to side with Israel over Palestine in a lot of the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. I'm glad that Biden, while remaining a staunch defender of Israel, is trying to rein in some of the more aggressive posturing towards.
Yo, okay, that's insane. Yeah, I'm glad that Biden is trying to rein in Israel. Okay, well, he's a fucking abject failure on that front. Okay, that part is ridiculous. No, Biden is not good on Israel at all. So much so that I personally believe his own individual zealotry is causing commotion in his own State Department, which very likely would have presented serious red lines under any other administration. Maybe not the Trump administration. He's the only guy who's like worse than Biden, I feel like, on Israel. But Biden's continuation of the Trump Israel policy is an abject failure. He continued the Abraham Accords, okay? He continued the Abraham Accords that completely wrote out Palestinians from the conversation. And also the idea that like Biden is reigning in Israel is so fucking laughable. They've openly stated that there are no red lines, routinely denied that Israel is not doing anything that constitutes ethnic cleansing. And beyond that, Biden has actually personally sidestepped Congress to more expediently send munitions to Israel. And also, if you care about Ukraine, okay, here's another really silly thing that Biden is doing. Biden is funneling funds and munitions into Israel's offensive ethnic cleansing campaign instead of giving those dumb bombs, rockets, and munitions that the Ukrainian military desperately needs on its defensive campaign. If those munitions have to go somewhere, then yes, Ukraine is a better place to send those munitions to, considering that at least you're on the right side morally. Maybe for the wrong reasons, but still on the right side morally on that conversation. It's an absolutely devastating error in foreign policy. Did Destiny not say he thinks Palestine should be genocided in that infamous clip? Yeah, but that was before he started reading Wikipedia pages. And then he came to the conclusion that Palestine should be genocided, but like we shouldn't call it a genocide because Israel's national security concerns of, you know, its demographic concerns that are national security concerns are totally valid. And actually it justifies Israel's current actions in both maintaining an apartheid state and also doing ethnic cleansing in Gaza now. Anyway, yeah, this is another good part about this too. Biden is also being ritualistically humiliated on Israel by Netanyahu every day. Biden will be like, oh yeah, we're going to do a two-state solution. And then Netanyahu the next day will be like, we're never doing a two-state solution. From the river to the sea or to the west of, for everything west of Jordan is actually going to belong to Israel. Like immediately after Biden goes, oh no, he doesn't mean it. He doesn't know what he's saying. Come on, Jack. I promise he'll find a good two-state solution. I just don't know. Oh, I don't know what kind of two states. Anyway, so no, he looks like a fucking clown. It's actually one of the absolute worst things for the Biden administration. It is, one, immoral to support an ongoing ethnic cleansing campaign. Okay, so that's number one. Contrary to popular opinion, I did not support Russia's invasion of Ukraine, by the way. So, you know, just let me clear that before that becomes a counterpoint here. Okay. And number two, not only is it immoral to support ethnic cleansing, it is also not even pragmatic for Biden to try to deal with Israel in the way that he's dealing with Israel. It just simply makes him look more incompetent to both Americans in the United States of America that are paying attention. Most people don't care, though. They still like, you know, Israel bombing Gaza. They're still very much, especially the voters, still very much don't give a shit or support it completely. But as far as like America's soft power goes, it looks like America can't even rein in its own attack dog. Okay. It's really bad across the board.
The Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. I'm proud that Biden said, hey, listen, we're going to delay some of these attacks. Hey, listen, we are going to allow humanitarian aid here. Hey, listen, we are going to try to, you know, not kill as many Palestinian people down there, while still, you know, signaling that he would be a staunch supporter of Israel in the conflict, assuming the civilian casualties don't go too high. For foreign policy, I mean,
25,000. What are we talking about?
Blemishes. I mean, like the biggest one you can give to Biden is Afghanistan and the pull out there. But man, are we going to talk about, you know, the Inspector General report that says that one of the biggest reasons why the Afghanistan pullout was so disastrous was because of the Doha Accords, where Donald Trump headed talks that didn't even include the Afghanistan army. I mean, like.
Okay, that's actually a solid point. The Afghan pullout was also a continuation of the Trump era policy. That was Trump's foreign policy, which Biden continued on. And that's why it was, you know, partially not a great pullout overall. Biden still demonstrated the political courage, probably one of the only instances where he demonstrated political courage and expended political social capital there. And he got punished for it relentlessly. Okay. It was a good thing that he did that.
These were disasters. Like when Biden took office, we had 2,500 troops left in Afghanistan. Like, what was the options even afforded to Biden at that point? Obviously, you've got the abandonment of the Kurds in northern Syria, to, you know, for the Turkish armies to lay waste to. You talk about Iran and North Korea, although I'm not sure where Ben would land on those. But yeah, that's broadly. Yeah.
That's a lot from both. You want to pick at something where you disagree with here?
Well, I mean, there's a lot. So, I mean, so I want to ask a few questions on each one of these.
Yeah, sure.
So let's talk about divisiveness for a second. So there's no one who can make the case that Donald Trump is not divisive.
Yeah.
Of course, he's incredibly divisive. It's a given. Do you treat Biden's rhetoric with the same level of seriousness that you treat Trump's rhetoric? Or I should probably put that the other way around. Should we treat Trump's rhetoric with the same level of seriousness as Joe Biden or, say, Barack Obama's rhetoric?
I'm going to try to be concise when I say this. Broadly speaking,
no way. That is not a good. Whoa, dude. If there was a fucking Democrat that spat like Donald Trump did, Ben Shapiro would be humiliating him on a daily basis. He would never baby that person. You can't fucking cut that and be like, oh, just ignore Trump. Just ignore his commentary. Okay, just ignore Biden's dementia then. Like, get the fuck out of here. You can't say that. What a stupid way to fucking frame this question. Oh my God, I really hope he fucking shovels those statements back down his fucking throat. That's insane. Come on, he's just a little guy. The bully pulpit is not significant? Really? You don't think Donald Trump saying there's very fine people on both sides when he goes up after Charlottesville, you don't think that's a significant fucking error? You think it was an accident that like white supremacist movements in America got galvanized into like literally taking off their masks and demonstrating on the fucking streets under the Trump regime, saying stand back and stand by to the fucking what was it, the dildos that were run by that fucking FBI informant, the Proud Boys? Come on, dude. You can't just say he's like just some little guy. That's actually quite significant. Now we're not talking about divisiveness. We're directly talking about Trump's rhetoric and what it did to American politics and the impact that it had on the ground. That is significant.
Especially in studying Israel, Palestine, and Ukraine, Russia. I try not to take politicians at their word because sometimes they just say stuff to say stuff. I understand that. But broadly speaking, I'm going to look at the rhetoric and the actions, and I am going to grade them the same. So yes, I would hold Biden and Trump to the same standard.
Right. So my feeling is, and this is one area where, for clarification, we're going to have a division, is that I, of course, don't treat Trump's rhetoric in the same way that I treat Biden's or Obama's. He's utterly uncalibrated, and he says whatever he wants to at any given time, and it doesn't even match up with his policy very often.
Can I ask you, like, for our head of state, our chief executive, shouldn't rhetoric be arguably one of the most important things that he does?
I mean, the answer would be yes. And now I've been given a choice between a person who I think in calibrated ways says things that are divisive and a person who in uncalibrated ways says things that are divisive. And so,
dude, you can't. Okay, dude, he's grading Trump on a curve. Like what? Dude, Trump can say whatever he wants because he's uncalibrated. You know what I mean? He's just like, but when Biden says it, he's measured and it's scary. Oh, okay. So you just agree with Trump and you don't agree with Biden, but you're too pussy to fucking say it as it is. Jesus Christ.
The evidence that Joe Biden is divisive is every poll taken.
Dude, oh my God, the intellectual giant of conservatism over here. That's awesome. I love that he just demonstrated his double standard, but tried to intellectualize it. You know what I mean? That's the opposite of what he said. What do you mean that's the opposite of what he said? He literally is saying that Trump is a silly goose. So don't take what he says seriously, whereas Biden is serious. So when Biden is saying stuff, you should take it very seriously, and he is divisive. Did I not understand it correctly?
Essentially August of 2021. He is, by all available metrics, incredibly divisive. A huge percentage of Americans are deeply unhappy, not only with his performance, but don't believe he's a uniter. That's just the reality. And that may just be a reflection. I mean, honestly, we may be putting too much on Trump or Biden personally. It may just be that the American people themselves are rhetorically divided because of social media, and social media can, in fact, be a cesspool.
One thing that I would ask you about that, though,
Sure.
is I agree, especially when you look at the favorability, but sometimes when I look at these polls, when you start to disaggregate them by party, I wonder if it's actually, is Biden historically divisive? Or I'm trying to think of a really polite way to say this. The people that like Trump worship Trump. I don't know. Like one of the most prescient things that Trump could have probably ever said was that I could kill someone on 5th Street and nobody would hold me accountable. So is it really that Biden is historically divisive, or is it that every single Trump supporter will always say that?
Oh, he was saying Trump is deliberate and Biden is a doddering fool. Wait, so he's saying Trump is deliberately divisive, but Biden is divisive on accident because he's a doddering fool? That's not even true. Biden doesn't come across as divisive at all. He's very, what? No, I think you guys misunderstood it. What the fuck?
That, but broadly speaking, and Ukraine, Russia, I try to work in the
thing is, and this is one area where, for clarification, we're going to have a division, is that I, of course, don't treat Trump's rhetoric in the same way that I treat Biden's or Obama's. He's utterly uncalibrated, and he says whatever he wants to at any given time, and it doesn't even...
Yeah, Ben is saying, I'm right. Ben is saying Trump is utterly uncalibrated, so I grade it differently than Obama and Biden.
match up with his policy very often.
Can I ask you, like, for our head of state, our chief executive, shouldn't rhetoric be arguably one of the most important things that he does?
I mean, the answer would be yes. And now I've been given a choice between a person who I think in calibrated ways says things that are divisive and a person who in uncalibrated ways says things that are divisive. And
yeah, no, I was dead on. I was right. Yeah, he's saying, I grade Trump on a curve because Trump is a meanie bobini and he's like uncalibrated and ooh, silly. But Biden is scary because he's very calibrated and very serious when he says divisive things. It's bullshit. He's just trying to demonstrate his double standard here.
And so the evidence that Joe Biden is divisive is every poll taken since essentially August of 2021.
Yeah, okay. What about Trump? What the fuck? Trump is literally, Trump is also polling disastrously consistently. Right now, right now, both are very unpopular. Okay. Brandon's unpopularity doesn't come from his divisive rhetoric, though. His unpopularity comes from the fact that he's old as fuck and an institutional fossil, and people recognize it as such. That's it. Also, yeah, that's a good take as well. Biden is divisive because of polling. Didn't Trump literally lose to Biden? What's Ben going to say? Fucking turn around and be like, actually, the election was stolen? Because you know his ass doesn't believe that. Basically, Trump is unhinged by nature, so whatever he says is fine, but others are essentially more logical, so what they say is more truthful and dangerous is what he's saying. Yeah, except he's not even looking at what Brandon is saying. What the fuck does Brandon say that's dangerous and divisive and scary? The only things that Brandon has ever said that are dangerous, divisive, or scary have been in the last quarter here, okay? In defense of Israel, which Ben is, I'm sure, not going to have an issue with. That's kind of crazy to me. Ben Shapiro is literally saying that brainwashed people who screeched that Joe Biden didn't legitimately win the election and literally broke aren't rallying around Joe Biden as president. Does Ben not realize how fucking stupid his arguments are? No, he doesn't. It doesn't matter because his community is stupid as fuck. So he can make stupid arguments and he sounds intelligent. And then people will go, yeah, that's my nerdy guy that I like.
He is, by all available metrics, incredibly divisive. A huge percentage of Americans are deeply unhappy, not only with his performance, but don't believe he's a uniter. That's just the reality. And that may just be a reflection. I mean, honestly, we may be putting too much on Trump or Biden personally. It may just be that the American people themselves are rhetorically divided because of social media, and social media can, in fact, be a cesspool.
One thing that I would ask you about that, though,
Sure.
is I agree, especially when you look at the favorability, but sometimes when I look at these polls, when you start to disaggregate them by party, I wonder if it's actually, is Biden historically divisive? Or I'm trying to think of a really polite way to say this. The people that like Trump worship Trump. I don't know. Like one of the most prescient things that Trump could.
Dude, just fucking be honest about it. What are you doing? Oh, the people that like Trump really like Trump? Just fucking say it. They're insane, okay? They're insane, sweaty little hogs and hogalinas and hoglets that fucking run around oiking like the little piggies that they are. Oh my God, I'm gonna lose my mind. They are a cult. The idea that these dumb motherfuckers are gonna come back to reality is insane. That's number one. Number two, most of the Republican Party knows that they're hogs and don't really care all that much, and they're going to rally around Donald Trump anyway when the time comes, okay? Just be honest. Be honest. It's cult. They're a cult, okay? You cannot reason with a group of individuals who think Joe Biden is a pedophile vampire who stole the election, who's simultaneously a doddering old fool, but also a sinister plot maker that stole the election from millions of honest Americans. Like, none of it makes sense. It's just a group of fucking mouth breathers who personally believe Trump good, Biden bad, Democrats are socialist, communist, pedophile, transgender vampires.
Could have probably ever said was that I could kill someone on 5th Street and nobody would hold me accountable. So is it really that Biden is strictly divisive, or is it that every single Trump supporter will always say that Trump is great? And
No,
always say that Biden...
But also that doesn't account for one very important thing. Donald Trump is divisive, sure, except Donald Trump barely ever got under 90% approval rating on the Republican Party, a fact that I used to mention all the time back in the day. Okay, there were moments where he trailed and he got to like 88% or whatever. Okay, but here's the thing. Donald Trump was always popular within the Republican Party. The reason why Joe Brandon's approval ratings are really, really bad is because Democrats don't like Joe Brandon. That's the issue. Okay, it's not that he's divisive. It's that he's old and he doesn't have that same retail politician juice that he used to have. Okay, that's it. That's it. Joe Biden's approval rating in the Democratic Party is disastrous. Okay? It's fucking disastrous. It has never touched like the Trump level of fascination and approval at all. 75% of the Democratic Party a couple months back wanted a different candidate. Okay? Anyway, let's
the reason I would say that Biden is, in fact, historically divisive is because Republicans felt much more strongly about Barack Obama than Joe Biden, actually.
But they didn't feel as strongly about Trump as they...
Hasanabi voting for Trump despite the Dems? Yeah, that's fucking dumb as hell, okay? You're a dumbass if you're doing that. That's so stupid.
Did about like Romney or McCain, right?
In what way? I mean,
and like, the allegiance to Trump.
Oh, no, there's certainly more allegiance to Trump than there is to Romney or McCain, largely because Trump won in 2016. But beyond that, the point that I'm making is that if you're looking at the stats in terms of divisiveness, Republicans always find the Democratic president divisive. The question is where the rest of the country is. And right now, there are a lot of Democrats who either don't agree with Biden or find him divisive. There are a lot of independents who find him divisive.
Literally, that Trump won in 2016. No, that's not how Trump won in 2016. You're wrong. Oh my God, I can't believe we're just like relitigating old school arguments that are just complete falsehoods that we've actually destroyed time and time again. Trump did not win because of Hillary or Bernie supporters that went and voted for him. Okay, the number of Hillary Clinton supporters that ended up voting for John McCain was higher in the first election that Obama had. The percentage of Hillary Clinton voters that went and voted for John McCain was higher. Why did Barack Obama become the president and John McCain didn't become the president? Because he ran a better campaign. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, was already unlikable and was despised overall and did not campaign appropriately on top of everything else. And that's it. That's the reason. That's the major reason why Donald Trump won. Also, hella Obama voters voted for Trump. I don't know what percentage that was, but I wonder if there's a higher percentage of Obama voters that voted for Trump than Bernie Sanders supporters in general.
So when we're comparing these things, I don't think they're leagues apart in terms of the divisive effect of what they say. Right. And I'm separating that off from like the inherent content of what they say, because obviously what Trump says is more divisive just on like the raw level. I mean, if he's insulting people as opposed to Joe Biden doing MAGA Republicans, like if I were an alien come down from space and look at these two statements, I'd say this one's more divisive than this one. But then there's the reality of being a human being in the world. And that is everyone has baked Donald Trump into the cake. And Joe Biden, again, started off with a patina of being non-divisive and now has emerged as divisive. If you don't mind, I actually want to get to the foreign policy questions, because this one is actually slightly less interesting.
Oh my God.
One quick thing, I guess.
I hate the divisive bullshit. It was so dumb. It was a dumb fucking conversation. Oh my God.
The reality of it, and we can look at opinion polls. What if we look at like legislative accomplishments? Like Biden is working on a 50-50 divided Senate. Donald Trump had both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court and got like no major legislation passed.
Well, I mean, he did.
That's insane. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Donald Trump passed the most significant tax cuts. What are we talking about? That's insane. The other side of this conversation is also silly because like Republicans don't ever pass spending bills, like, or not spending bills. They do pass spending bills, obviously, but like they don't pass signature legislation. It is antithetical to their worldview. What the fuck? Republicans don't run on legislation anymore, okay? They only use the legislative body for tax cuts. That's it. Beyond that, what they end up doing is pack the courts, use state legislatures, completely sidestep the federal government, and then take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's their modus operandi. That's how they fucking operate. And beyond that, it's not like they have any real tangible legislative goals. The only thing I guess that you could point to is that like he failed to repeal Obamacare. That's it. That's it. Which would have been disastrous and genuinely unpopular regardless, because it would unwind important things like protecting my brain is melted at this point. It would unwind the provisions like you can be under your parents' healthcare until the age of 26. It would also destroy pre-existing condition protections. Those are very important parts of Obamacare. And he also still ended up repealing the part that he found to be annoying, which was the stopgap funding measure for those who weren't a part of Obamacare or did not show insurance that had to pay a fucking price for it, pay a fine for it. So he took that out anyway. So who cares? He literally succeeded on that front. That was the thing that they hated the most, supposedly. Not that it fucking matters. Yeah, the mandatory penalty is gone. He removed that.
Lose Congress in 2018, but yeah,
sure. But prior to that, because we got the infrastructure bill, I think, in 1 year, which Trump promised for his entire presidency. He didn't get anywhere on it.
I mean, yes, his Republican base was not.
Yeah, dude, come on, infrastructure, really? Trump was gonna do infrastructure? That's crazy. That's a dumber argument than fucking Trump promised to build the wall and he didn't. Okay, that's a better argument than being like Trump promised he was gonna do infrastructure. Nobody believed that was a real thing. What the?
Not in favor of mass spending on infrastructure, and
see?
So there's that. I think that's mostly a state and local.
But they were
issue.
in favor of mass spending for tax cuts.
That's not spending. I mean,
effectively it is, right? Like
effectively, it's not.
Well, if you're cutting tax receipts, but you're not changing the level of spending, like Biden did with the IRA.
I mean, again, we have a fundamental philosophical difference here. I think that when the government takes my money, that is not the government somehow being more fiscally responsible. And when the government allows me to keep my money, I don't see that as the government spending. I see that as my money, and the government is taking less of it.
That's great, but
Oh, that's crazy. There you go. This is why neoliberals are woefully incompetent at debating fucking neoliberals that are right wing. Okay, that's sick, man. He's over here talking about fiscal responsibility with a dude who does not give a shit. You're not gonna win that argument, brother. Like, even if you win that argument, who are you really winning that argument for? It's not a thing that anybody believes, okay? The left doesn't believe it because they look at fucking military spending and go, oh, that's really weird that we have so much fiscal responsibility for our endless discretionary spending increases year over year for the American military, but no fucking fiscal responsibility for anything else. The right doesn't believe it. It's all magic, okay? The only people that care about the deficit, I say this all the time, are the dumbass Democrats, okay? Like, that's it. The Democrats and fucking Paul Ryan. Who else believes in real deficit hawking? Not the Republicans. They only talk about it when Democrats are in charge. Democrats, they are the only ones who actually are trying to balance the budget. It's so dumb. And it's not a popular position to push for anyway, okay?
at the end of the day, the government is still going to be in a deficit spending, and they're going to have to borrow money from the treasury.
Right. We have a spending problem. In other words, not a receipts problem is the case that I'm making. The problem with Donald Trump is not that he lowered taxes. The United States has one of the most
We have a
progressive
spending problem, not a receipts
tax
problem.
systems on the planet. And in fact, if you wish to have a European-style social welfare state, what you actually need is to tax the middle class to death. I mean, the reality is that the top 20% of the American population pays literally all net taxes in the United States after state benefits and all of this.
Sure.
So if you actually wanted to have the kind of social welfare state that many liberals seem to want to have, like Northern Europe, for example, you'd actually have to tax people who make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000.
He's not completely wrong. Not tax the middle class to death. He's not entirely wrong. We do need tax reform, okay, especially the federal level. And a major part of the problem is also not just simply purely taxing income, but developing better mechanisms to tax wealth, okay? That's it. No, you would end up taxing the middle class more as well in this process, for sure. The reality is that there is so much unimaginable income inequality that the middle class and anyone below the middle class are actually giving a significant proportion of their yearly earnings back to the fucking government, both the local or the state government and the federal government, than the actual billionaire. So a lot of people get lost in the sauce and talk about like, oh, the top marginal tax rate. The problem isn't at the top marginal tax rate, which is relatively high in comparison to European countries as well. I myself pay because I don't have any vehicles to hide or any shelters to hide my earnings or any real deductions or anything like that, that I just straight give a lump sum to the federal government and the state government at the end of the year that basically almost cuts my earnings in half. I'm one of the very few people at my own tax rate that operates like this. Beyond that, many people at this level would oftentimes create like multiple different LLCs, S corps, ways in which they can, manage their taxes a little bit better. And in this process, I have realized that like a big chunk of the issues come from those who are in the 1% and above, right? Or in the top 10% of wealth in this country that have assets. Okay? The top 10% of wealth in this country have most of their wealth in assets, and we do not have a decent way of taxing said assets, okay? It's not about income at all, because when you target income, and we have done that, and you could still raise the top marginal tax rate for sure, but when you go off of simply pure income, you're going to be taxing only like lawyers, doctors, high earners in the professional field, athletes, celebrities, you know what I mean? Like musicians, entertainers, but not like those in finance, not the people that you think of when you think of like actual billionaire style wealth. And that's fine. And I think that you can still increase top marginal tax rate. Okay. But beyond that, the real issue is going to be on the capital gains front and on the wealth front in general. Okay. You got to stop reading my messages. I'm a dumbass. What? Richest country in the world and our rolls filled with cracks, bro? I'm not. I'm only reading the top of the hour ad break. You have to look at the effective tax rate, though, and effective tax rates in America are at an all-time low.
And I don't want that. I agree with that. But
So-
how do you explain the lack of legislation?
I mean,
If he's like such a uniter.
because I think the Republican Party itself is quite divided, and I think that Trump's.
But isn't that his
can't-
job? He's the head of the Republican Party. He's the Republican president of the United States.
I mean, again, I don't think that Joe Biden has passed wildly historic legislation.
The
Other
infrastructure
than,
bill was the largest, like.
so
like,
here's the problem. If you're a Republican, the only bills that you can get consensus on tend to be bills that either that let's be real about this, that are tax cuts, because as you would, I think, agree with, when it comes to polling data, Americans constantly say they want to cut the government, and then the minute you ask them which program, they have no idea what they're right. Exactly, and so it's much harder to come up with a bill to cut things than it is to come up with a bill to add things. Which is why spending was out of control under Trump as well. But there are some Republicans who still don't want to spend on those things, right? So inherently, the task that this goes back to the first question. The task that Republicans think government is there to do is different than the task that Democrats think that government is there to do. So the way that the very metric of success for a Democratic president versus a Republican president, namely, for example, pieces of legislation passed, as a Republican, one of my goals is to pass nearly no legislation because I don't actually want the government involved in more areas of our life. I want to ask a couple questions on the foreign policy.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Wait. Real quick. So, for instance, like Donald Trump wanted to punish China, and he wanted to bring microprocessor manufacturing to the United States. Biden did that with legislation, with the CHIPS Act. You talk about like spending being out of control, and I mean, I can agree with that. I think anybody who looks at the numbers has to agree with that. But why not pass legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, which is at least like spending neutral, right? Like, why are there not bills where Donald Trump could take?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that whenever the government says something is spending neutral, it rarely materializes that way. That is not going to be a spending neutral bill.
Sure, but there's a difference between like at least they say it's spending neutral versus to say $500 billion bill over like 10 years.
Yeah, that's fucking bullshit, okay? If you're a deficit hog, at least do a better job of arguing your positions, Destiny. What the fuck are you talking about? They literally have been desperately trying to cut IRS funding out of the IRA. That is like one of the major ways to actually fix the deficit. Ben Shapiro is not going to be able to defend against that position. Every dollar that you spend on the IRS, okay? Every dollar that you spend on the IRS comes back in $3 of the government coffers, okay? That is not a way to cut, that is not a way to fix the deficit by fucking cutting IRS spending. It's bullshit, okay? Also, the 3-minute ad break is upon us. I forgot.
I mean, well, but again,
no, I said the IRS and I said the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I thought the IRS funding provisions were inside of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the IRA. Oh, sorry. It's not even $1 for It's not even $1 for 3. I was wrong. It's $1 for 7. Uncle Sam is going to get so mad at me for fucking that important statistic up. On average. Anyway.
I don't see a tax cut as a matter of quote spending neutrality. The big problem is they keep spending, not that they are allowing me to keep the money that I earned and they did not earn. But
okay, so then just to understand, so if somebody just did massive like reductions in tax receipts, so tax cut after tax cut after tax cut, but they didn't change spending at all, you wouldn't consider that like an increase in deficit spending or out of control spending. You would just say they're just tax cuts.
No, the opposite. I would consider it a wild. I would consider it a wild overspending.
Okay.
Meaning
so then
that,
was it under Trump then when he did the tax?
I mean, the deficit spending, by the way, under Biden is way worse than it was under.
Of course, but we're in post-COVID, right?
COVID ended effectively. I mean, you live in Florida. COVID effectively ended in the state of Florida by the middle of 2021.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you're a vaccine fan, by like April, May of 2021, there was wide availability of vaccines, whether or not you like the vaccines.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were done.
I agree, but like we're in a post, like how many trillions of dollars have been dumped in worldwide that are like leading to inflation, right? The inflation is like a worldwide issue right now because of the economy shutting down for a year or two. It's not like those effects are gone in 1 year, right? COVID might be gone, but the after effects of all the stimulus spending and the unemployment and everything
The
else.
definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. So pouring more money on top of that makes for more inflation. That's what it does.
Sure, I agree.
Okay. Let's use deflationary mechanisms then. You got monetary policy and you have fiscal policy. How about we use some fiscal policy? It's always monetary policy. Like, what do you mean? Ask Ben about what he would do as far as deflationary fiscal policies. I want to know what Ben Shapiro thinks we can do, because it would go against his own personal worldview. I mean, even neoclassical economists agree on this, I think. Let me turn on this indoor walk. That's right. We're walking, baby.
But like there's also the definition of when do you deficit spend is when economies are headed for recessions, right? Rather than when economies are doing really well, like they were under Trump and he was deficit spending, whereas Biden can at least make the argument that I ought to be deficit spending because the economy is heading for potential recession. Right?
So here's the thing. I don't think that the economy was actually headed for recession. In fact, if you look at the economic statistics.
Every economist said it was.
No,
okay, they're still saying that there's like a recession coming, right?
Right, but that was largely because of the after effects of inflation, meaning if you inflate the economy, what you're going to end up doing is bursting a bubble. And then when that bubble bursts, you'll get a recession. I mean, that was the basic idea, right? The question was whether you're going to get a soft landing. But if you actually look at, for example, the employment statistics or the economic growth statistics in the United States, what they look like under the last year's Obama and then Trump. I mean, this is what the chart looks like. It looks like this, and then it hits March of 2020. It goes like that,
yeah.
Right, and then by like September, it bounces back up. Right, it's a V-shaped recovery, and then it starts to peter out.
Sure,
and
a lot because of the American Recovery Plan, right? That Biden did as well.
I mean,
4 million jobs. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to attribute it to that because the rates of growth in job growth from September, October, November were actually very similar to the rates of job growth after Joe Biden took office. What you see is actually kind of a straight line. I mean, what the chart looks like. In any case, okay. So on the foreign policy stuff, this is getting abstruse, but on the foreign policy,
save him, Legs. What are you doing? I mean, there are God. I thought Destiny was like a Joe Biden simp. Doesn't he portray himself as like a big like he talks about Brandon being like a boss hog? This is one area where he should be fucking ripping into Ben Shapiro. What is happening? What is happening? You didn't even ride for Biden hard enough. What the fuck do you ride for? That's crazy. That's crazy. I thought you were, what is going on here? He barely brought up that Brandon brought new 4 million jobs. Okay, fine. Where's the rest of the fucking, I can't believe this. Oh my God. Okay.
Policy stuff. So
he said that he's amazing in international politics. That's not enough writing. Yeah, he's writing for Biden on the worst fronts. Biden is actually pretty progressive on domestic policies in comparison to prior leadership. Okay. And I've talked about this quite a bit. Biden has actually done a decent job on many domestic issues. Okay. Pro-labor, like his advocacy on that front. The fact that he even cut a deal with the rail workers after forcibly breaking their strike, but quietly getting their demands met with the railroad. Now, even if you're like a liberal guy, okay, you can openly admit that that was a good thing that he did. Okay, his agency appointments were great. He has beefed up the NLRB. He's done a decent job with the FTC, even with the SEC. Like, there's a lot going on that Biden has done a decent job with. Okay, demands were met, yes. However, and the IRA is not bad either. You got fucking battery development facilities, which are slated to be unionized, by the way. You have a lot more manufacturing facilities opening up, a lot more jobs. These are all good things that Biden did. Okay, video games are back under Biden. Let's be real. Anyway, now, if I were to advocate for Biden, those are the things that I would push on. Okay. He's done a decent job. I don't know why he's not talking about it. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah,
Grand Theft Auto 6 was announced under Biden. Didn't happen under Trump. Let me tell you that.
questions that I have with regard to Biden on foreign policy. Very, very simple question. Do you think that the situation in the Middle East is better now than it was under Donald Trump?
Probably. That's a hard one. The factors that I'm making right now are like, obviously you've got the.
Oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind. Yes, of course it's worse. Directly as a consequence of the Trump regime. That's it. That's the answer. There's only one answer to this. There's only one answer to this. It's Trump. It's literally Trump. That's the reason why Biden is bad. He is continuing. Okay. Oh, sorry. I was Kaya eating a bone. Okay. I have to fucking, I can't walk and yell at the same time. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I know a lot of people say, Hasan, all of my haters, especially like Destiny fans that come in here, they always say like, I'm so bad about foreign policy. But I really legitimately think Destiny is really, really, unfortunately, a little out of his depth here. Okay. The issue with the Biden regime is that it is a direct continuation of Donald Trump's horrible foreign policies. Okay. Horrible foreign policies. You can just very easily turn this around. You're not letting it play.
Israel-Palestinian war that's going on right now, which is kind of bad. But like broadly speaking, I'm not sure how much that affects the Middle East as much as like the collapse of Syria. 2013 Syrian civil war sent millions of immigrants throughout all of Europe,
which was under
Obama and continued under Trump. Trump didn't do anything to alleviate any of the Syrian civil war.
Why did Syria end up as a preserve of Russia again?
How did Syria end up as a preserve of Russia?
Yes. Why did it end up being essentially a client state of Russia?
I know that Putin enjoys access to the ports down there. I don't know.
I mean, the reason is because Barack Obama suggested that there was a red line that would be drawn in the face of chemical weapons use. Bashar al-Assad then used chemical weapons in Syria, and Barack Obama was unwilling to then essentially create consequences for Syria in the form of any sort of Western strike. And so instead he outsourced it to Russia. This is 2013, 2014.
Sure. Do you think there might have been some hesitancy after like seeing how Libya ended up that maybe us like intervening?
Who was president during Libya?
Obama.
Yeah, I mean, like, so
sure, but what does that have to do with anything? I'm just saying, like, there might have been like a mistake learned.
The point that I'm making is that actually the Middle East, I mean, just historically speaking, was historically good under Donald Trump. I mean, it's very difficult to make the case that either before or after Trump were better than during Donald Trump.
Okay. Foreign policy, just like economic policy, really, is almost always a direct continuation of prior administrations. Okay. Everything that happened in the Brandon administration, you can directly find fault in the administration prior. Even Syria, when you talk about putting the blame on Biden, it's still a major problem due to the former war on terror and the destabilization that the Republican administration of George W. Bush created. it doesn't matter ultimately because both parties are completely aligned when it comes to foreign policy anyway. But if you were to try and make an argument here between like foreign policy between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is still worse. It's just the truth. Donald Trump greatly escalated drone strikes. Donald Trump was horrifyingly bad on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem was a major misstep. A misstep that I don't even think Hillary fucking Clinton would have done. Okay? These are all awful flubs. The Abraham Accords was genuinely awful. Genuinely awful. Casting aside the signature accomplishment of the Obama administration in the form of the Iran denuclearization agreement, which was created through so much unilateral cooperation and was continued on with our European contemporaries literally going in and investigating, putting fucking cameras in nuclear facilities. Oh, it's just so bad. Biden's faults and failures are a direct consequence of following on the Trump agenda on foreign policy, okay? Trump literally killed Qasem Soleimani. It's not even a fucking question. Like, multilateral, I said unilateral. You're right. Sorry, multilateral.
Donald Trump.
Was it, I mean, the Syrian, I don't think that Trump contributed to the Syrian situation in improving much. I think
he
caught
wrecked
a lot
ISIS. He did wreck ISIS, which was in the.
I mean, ISIS had been getting wrecked by the Kurds in Iraq, by every single person, by Assad's army, by Putin, by Turkey. Literally everybody was fighting against ISIS at that point.
There's a spike in violence, and then the Trump. I mean, you get credit for when you're president, presumably. I mean, things got better with ISIS under Trump.
I mean, yeah, they did. I mean,
things got worse with ISIS under Obama.
For sure.
He called them the JV squad. Sure. And then they became not the JV squad.
Who created ISIS? Shut up. Dude, how is... Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Trump literally killed the #1 ISIS killer in the region, okay? Qasem Soleimani. Sure, bad guy. You don't like him, okay? Plenty of people don't like him in the region. But undeniably, that's the guy who was killing ISIS, okay? Trump did such a good job of dealing with ISIS that he killed the fucking #1 ISIS killer. Jesus Christ. Lamau Hassan is a crybaby, to be honest. Okay, I'm embellishing for the point of like, being entertaining here because it's such a fucking boring ass debate otherwise. I don't know why you immediately go, oh, yes, this is a Republican. Never mind. I love you, brother. Spartan 1117. Let me tell you. Oh my God, we caught one, boys. We got a Republican in the building. Listen, Patriot. I love you, okay? You're right. Fuck Joe Biden, baby.
But I don't know if ISIS...
God, I got so excited. One conservative in like a sea of annoying, smarmy liberals. Oh, hell yeah.
This is originating in Syria and Baghdadi, and all of the growth of that is necessarily Obama's fault. I know that we like to say that Obama created ISIS. I don't know if you say that, but I've heard that saying a lot. I think that's a little bit simplistic. I don't think that when I'm looking at like actions that presidents have taken, the biggest criticism I have for like Middle Eastern policy is I think the Doha Accords were a disaster. And I think that's like one of the biggest blemishes that we have right now. I would also argue that moving the embassy to Jerusalem was also kind of silly.
Yes.
And arguably contributed to some of the conflict we see right now.
No,
I'll
argue precisely the
some. No, that's huge. That's a huge deal. No, you're right. Don't fucking back away.
opposite, especially given the fact that after the
God damn it, Wikipedia reading motherfucker, Jesus Christ.
movement of the embassy to Jerusalem, the Abraham Accords continued to sign and actually expand. And that if Donald Trump had been elected, I have no doubt in my mind that Saudi Arabia would now be a part of the Abraham Accords. In fact, that was basically pre-negotiated. And then when Joe Biden...
Oh, dude. Oh, shit. Wait, I didn't realize. Guys, if Saudi Arabia officially normalized relations with Israel, then the Palestinian population would magically go, oh, fuck, dude. Saudi Arabia, which we love and are super fond of, are now dealing with Israel. So I guess that must mean that, like, the situation is solved. Shut the fuck up, Ben, you fucking idiot. What do you mean Saudi Arabia? The fuck are you talking about? October 7th literally is a direct consequence of writing out the Palestinians from the equation completely and trying to normalize relations with Gulf states, but while sidestepping the Palestinians entirely.
Took office, Joe Biden took a very anti-Saudi stance on a wide variety of issues. The biggest single effect in the Middle East of Joe Biden's presidency, and again, I agree with you that not every foreign policy issue can be laid at the hands of a president. Joe Biden's main approach to the Middle East was very similar to the Obama approach, which is why the Middle East was chaotic under Obama and chaotic under Biden. And that was to alienate allies like Saudi Arabia and Israel, and instead to try to make common cause or cut deals with Iran. What that did is incentivize terrorism from Iran. What we're watching in the Middle East is Iran attempting to use every one of its terror proxies in the Middle East, and it was specifically launched in an attempt...
It's so funny that he's saying this when, like, Iran, Israel, and the United States of America said that Iran was not involved in October 7th, okay? Why did all three of them say that? Even Iran themselves said, you know, October 7th was sick. We loved it, but, like, not gonna lie, we can't take credit for it. So why did that happen? Okay. Why did that happen? That's because the Palestinians did October 7. Hamas and other Palestinian militias did October 7. Okay? The notion that this has anything to do with Iran is really stupid beyond the fact that, like, yeah, of course, Iran is still arming Hamas and training Hamas and whatnot. But, like, they're not the ones who did it. And the major reason as to why it happened is because they were not dealing with the Palestinians at all. They were just completely writing off the Palestinians from the equation with the Abraham Accords. It is a genuine, massive, disastrous foreign policy failure. Whoo, goddamn, dude. And by the way, you are not going to find a single person in the American foreign policy blob that will actually genuinely, legitimately agree with Ben's point here. Okay? I'm talking like Rand Corporation is not going to fucking agree with this. It's so stupid.
To avoid what Biden actually was trying.
Haaretz doesn't agree with it. Former Shin Bet officials don't agree with it. Former Israeli Knesset members don't agree with it. The idea that Ben is right and all of these academics and all these fucking wonks and dudes who are like Zionists themselves and totally on board with Israel, the fact that they don't agree with Ben, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. Iran literally was pissed and told Ismail Haniyeh, when he went to Tehran, that Khamenei said, we trained you all for a future war, but you went ahead and left the whole axis of resistance in the dark. Like, they literally, they just completely did it on themselves, on their own. And they did it specifically because they were completely written out. Like a couple weeks prior, Netanyahu went in front of the UN and basically showed a fucking map where Palestine didn't even exist. Okay?
Trying to do, which was good, which was after 2 years of failure with Saudi Arabia, try to bring them into the Abraham Accords, right? That was what was burgeoning at the end of last year. And Iran saw that, and Iran decided that they were going to throw a grenade into the middle of those negotiations by essentially activating Hamas.
Wait, if that's the case, if Iran activated Hamas to fuck up the Abraham Accords, then doesn't that undermine the point that you're trying to make? What if Saudi Arabia joined in on the Abraham Accords? What difference does that make? What do you mean? What a dumb fucking argument to make.
Activates Hamas, commits October 7th. Israel, as a sovereign nation state, has to respond to the murder of 1,200 of its citizens and the taking kidnapping of 240. Israel has to do that not only to go after its own hostages and try to restore them, but also to reestablish military deterrence in the most violent region of the world. Hezbollah gets active on Israel's northern border. Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. They get active on the northern border.
Dude, I would destroy Ben on Israel-Palestine shit. I'm serious. He is so bad. I think it's because he's like really confident because a lot of people in his orbit 100% agree with him. Okay? Like, Destiny is going to agree with him. He's not going to disagree with him because he has assumed a position of being like an ultra Zionist himself. It's crazy. The idea that like Saudi relations with Israel would somehow Saudi relations with Israel will somehow like fix the problem of Palestinians being ethnically cleansed and living under an apartheid is so stupid. Unless you literally think that Arabs all are of one mind or something. You know what I mean? They all operate with one mind.
Houthis in Yemen get active. These are all the only reason all this is happening at the same time is because Iran is doing this, right? And not just that, they're threatening global shipping. Sure. If you're talking about the effects of global supply lines, which I totally agree had a major inflationary effect on the economy thanks to COVID, right now the cost of shipping is nearly double what it was just a few weeks ago, and that is
damn. That's crazy, man. Maybe Israel should stop fucking pummeling Gaza then.
Because a ragtag group of Houthi barbarians are attacking international shipping and forcing everybody to stop using the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and instead going around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. All of that is the result of the fact that Joe Biden reoriented the United States in the very early days in favor of a more pro-Iranian stance. He appointed Robert Malley to negotiate the Iran deal, who, as it turns out, was using proxies. Many of his aides were actually taking money from Iran. The Biden administration, literally one of their first acts was to delist the Houthis as a terror organization and end sanctions against the Houthis. These are all moves that Biden made very early on. They were disastrous moves. But when it comes to domestic...
I like that he's saying Biden is bad, which, by the way, this is exactly what I talk about when I talk about why Biden comes across as weak. Because it's wishy-washy bullshit. He's literally hitting Biden on like some of the good things that he did as far as foreign policy, and then wrapping that around and talking about how bad Biden is when Biden is literally doing exactly what Ben wants. Ben's argument is Biden should be just as fucking ruthless to the Yemeni population as Trump would have been. And also simultaneously talking about complete nonsense, like the Abraham Accords would be successful if Saudi Arabia automatically normalized relations. Saudi Arabia would be on fucking fire right now if China had not facilitated a goddamn deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia to halt hostilities in Yemen, okay, to end the blockade, to end the genocide. Let me tell you, the idea that a cessation of hostilities was not beneficial for Saudi Arabia is ridiculous. So China actually did more in terms of like fixing that area than America did. It's so unimaginably stupid to make this argument that if Saudi had openly normalized relations with Israel as opposed to like what they're doing now, which by the way, since day one, Saudi Arabia, before the American CENTCOM came into play, was already fucking trying to intercept Houthi missiles and shit on its way to fucking Israel regardless. Saudi Arabia has been aligned with Israel in perpetuity at this point. It's so ridiculous. We're not talking about like the 1970s, okay? You're giving too much credit to China. Saudi went to them to spite the U.S. for not helping against the Houthis. Brother, I'm not like a BRICS truther at all. I understand that. These countries are leveraging their relations with China in an effort to get better deals or make better demands from the United States of America. I agree. I'm simply telling you what is going on. What happened is the Iran-Saudi normalization agreement was facilitated by China. That is true. That came with a cessation of hostilities against the Yemeni population.
Policy. I think he hasn't been nearly as damaging on domestic policy as he has been on foreign policy.
Sure. So just on a couple of Middle Eastern things. So one of the big things that threw the Middle East into disaster was what we are all traumatized by it now, was the Iraq invasion, which I'm a Republican president. You agree with that, right?
Sure.
Yes. The deposition of Saddam Hussein and everything that followed after probably contributed more to the growth of ISIS.
Wait, Destiny is anti-Iraq invasion. That's really shocking. I mean, all of his supporters are making like pro-Iraq invasion style arguments lately. So I thought that's shocking. Okay, let's
the
continue.
destabilization of that entire region, probably more than anything else. I think that prior to
Why are you anti-Iraq invasion? Are you a Saddam supporter? It's kind of interesting.
Bush, for Clinton, even at the beginning of Bush's presidency, we were on some kind of road to normalcy with Iran, which I think has to happen, whether we like them or not, until Bush, for whatever reason, decides to throw Iran into the axis of evil.
And I need to remember that we were on a road to normalcy with Iran in the 1990s.
That
we were on a road to normalcy with Iran in the 1990s.
My understanding is that, from the late 90s and prior to the axis of evil labeling of Iran, that there was going to be some path forward to where we could start to normalize relationships with them.
I find that very difficult to believe, and I don't see a lot of evidence. I mean, we can just disagree on that.
Sure, we can disagree on that.
Why? I mean, why does Ben disagree with that? I wonder. I mean, I don't personally think that America was ever genuinely interested in normalizing relations with Iran, but why does Ben disagree with that? I wonder.
But I know that
the after effects, just quick note, the after effect of the Iraq war that was the most devastating was the increase in power of Iran.
I agree. Yeah, because of the destabilization of Iraq and Iraq not having a government that.
Wait, that's the bad part of the invasion of Iraq, is that it gave Iran more power in the region. That's
that was functional for at least a decade,
and was in fact a Sunni government, right? Originally, it was a Sunni government. Disbanding the Sunni army was one of the worst things that the Bush administration did.
Banning all the former Ba'ath parties,
sectarian,
all horrible under a Republican president. But
don't disagree.
That that probably contributed more to ISIS, to the growth of power in Iran, maybe even to the destabilization of Syria, probably more than anything that Obama did. Also, when we look at Iran funding people in the region, I don't disagree with that as well. I think Iran is the #1 instigator of bad guy things right now in the Middle East. Iran. The IRGC, I supported when Donald Trump killed Soleimani. I think that was a great thing. I think that Iran is a major problem.
Wait, I don't get it. So if you're I'm sorry. He's anti-deposition of Saddam, but pro-assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Like, one created a power vacuum. The other one greatly escalated tensions. Why is the other, like, if you're against one, why are you not against the other? It doesn't make sense. I mean, this is like entirely incoherent. If you're talking about the destabilization of the Middle East, he is anti-Saddam. I think you misheard. No, but he said the deposition of Saddam and the destabilization of Iraq was greatly beneficial to Iran. Okay? And he's talking about it like we shouldn't have done that. I don't know what his solution is. I have never interrogated his positions on the matter, but like, you can't. The assassination of Qasem Soleimani was unimaginably bad. It was a total fuck up. Genuine fuck up. Definitely not appropriate. And the only reason why it didn't escalate into further conflict is restraint on the Iranian side, partially as a consequence of their own economic prospects in general. But it's not because of America. America was not being restrained in that situation at all. It was a gross violation of sovereignty. Anyway, having said that, I mean, this is a classic liberal position, I think, which is like, maybe he's a Ba'athist. Yeah. Yeah. Wait till he finds out that the Baathists are secular. He's going to be like, wait, they're not Islamist fundamentalists? I didn't get to that part of the Wikipedia page. Maybe they're not so bad. Yeah, what's not to like, dude? Secular guys, pro-America early on. I'm just saying, maybe not so bad. Anyway.
However, I don't know if the path forward
Saddam was
is
a classical
constantly being a
liberal.
belligerent to Iran or trying to figure out some road to normalcy. I don't know if the collapse of Iran or the destruction of that country, considering how unpopular the Ayatollah even is there, like the citizens of Iran, I don't think are big supporters of the government there. I feel like moving on a path where, let's do our nuclear inspections. We had that Iranian nuclear deal that Trump pulled out of. Let's do nuclear inspections. Make sure you're not on the way to nuclear weapons. Let's unfreeze some funds. Let's move in some direction where we get on a good term with you. I feel like that's the most important thing that needs to happen in the Middle East. As much as people like to look at the Abraham Accords, who cares if, what was it? Bahrain, I think Oman, I think
UAE,
Sudan,
Morocco.
the UAE and Morocco, yeah, or something like all of these people, even Saudi Arabia, already have like de facto normalization with Israel anyway. They're all trading.
No,
they're all
I mean, to pretend that anybody even 15 years ago would have been talking about normalization in Saudi Arabia and Israel is insane. I mean,
Why would that be insane? Why would that be insane? Saudi Arabia did 9/11 and we just acted like that was not even a big deal and immediately said Iran, which was Saudi Arabia's proxies, enemies in the region, was actually responsible for it. We literally had Saudi Arabia do 9/11. We turned around and attacked belligerently every fucking other country in the region. We went into Afghanistan. We went into Iraq. And we claimed that Iran was somehow aligned with these countries when they were literally aligned with us against all of the Wahhabist and Salafist sects in the region. What the fuck? What are you saying? Why wouldn't we have a complete normalization agreement set in place between Saudi Arabia and Israel? They're both are incredibly important allies in the region. The fuck are you talking about? This is so silly. Come on, dude. Push back, please. I'm like a little kid with a fucking I'm like a little kid with a stick. Like, do something. Come on.
They were already on that path. They had already been they were already de facto trading partners with each other. They had already been collaborating and doing
That's a wild claim that Israel and Saudi Arabia were going to normalize 15 years ago.
15.
That's not a wild claim. That's not a wild claim at all. Shut the fuck up, Ben. That's not a wild claim at all. What the fuck are you talking about? That's not, why is that a wild claim? Oh my God. Why would that be a wild claim? They're both profoundly important trade partners of the United States of America. It's not like we magically decided 15 years ago to start giving Saudi Arabia weapons or have bases. The fuck is Ben talking about? You're so dumb. How can he talk so much about Israel, Palestine, and just not know anything? At least like know the right talking points. No, the reason why he's saying this as a wild claim is because he doesn't know what the correct talking points would be in this situation. The only thing that the Abraham Accords did was make the private relationship that Saudi Arabia had with America, and not so private really, and in recent years especially, and all the other Gulf nation states, the relations that they had with America and Israel, because Israel is a continuation of America, okay? It was just to make it public. That's it.
Years ago, it might have been a wild claim. But after Turkey, after Jordan, and then in the past like 20 years of like economic relations and ties with each other, all of the leadership in the Middle East, and you'll agree with this, look at Israel and they go, okay, well, we've got Palestinians who, God bless them, do nothing. And then you've got Israel, which is on a region with no natural resources to somehow become like an economic giant. They're good to trade with. Their population is educated. They, have military power. All of the leadership in these Middle Eastern countries are wanting to be friendly with Israel and are engaging in trade.
Dude, why is Destiny using like Zionist arguments like he's like 65 years old or something? Like, this is what Joe Biden believes, okay? I feel like these are arguments that like a really old person would make who like thinks about the glory days of Israel, 6-day war type shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure, he's a Zionist, but like I feel like the talking points have been updated by now. He's like, yeah, everybody wants to be everybody is like, wow, look at Israel, the greatest economy, no natural resources. They took a swamp and they turned it into bountiful harvest. It's like, yeah, dude, I can't believe the Israel, bountiful nation. They made ways, dude. It's an entire country filled to the fucking brim with goddamn DJs and also Pegasus spy tech, okay? What the fuck are you talking about? The entire purpose of Israel is a destabilizer in the region. It's America's military base as a country. That's it. with its own motherfucking espionage network. This is crazy.
factor with Israel, and the idea that like the UAE and Bahrain were brought in to say like, oh well, now we're going to officially say this. I just
those are the first steps toward obviously the formation of a new Middle East in which economics would predominate over sectarian conflict. The chief obstacle to that is Iran.
I agree.
The notion that negotiations with the Ayatollah were going to be a solution to any of this is
But do we think
absolutely benign.
is it the Abraham Accords that's convincing Saudi Arabia to take a stance against Iran?
No, I mean,
No,
Saudi
they're
Arabia.
already fighting. They're already fighting with each other, right? Like,
No.
I don't think the Abraham Accords moved us any closer towards any type of real peace in the
Okay,
world. What
good.
has to happen is something
Rein
has
it
to
in.
happen with
Good
Iran.
job.
There has
That's
to be some
good.
diplomatic
Well,
bilateral communication there.
No, what has to happen is the containment.
He's right. He's right. That's good. That's a good way to talk about it.
Which was what was what was taking place with the increased normalization with the Sunni Arab world and Israel, combined with significant economic sanctions.
Dude, I think Lex is interjecting too much. He really needs to dial it back in this debate. I mean, he's he's really punching a lot. You know what I mean? He's got to pull back a little bit, right? Come on, Lex.
The notion that
Big yapper.
there's this far-fetched notion in foreign policy circles that diplomacy can sort of be wish cast out of thin air. That if you sit around a table, that you can always come to an agreement with somebody. The Ayatollahs do not have common interests with the United States. They do not. And this idea that they are willing to take money in exchange for example, some sort of peaceful acquiescence to Israel's existence is obviously untrue.
Hasn't that been the case though? That you've had a region with tons of sectarian violence for a long time, and then finally Turkey was like, you know what, this isn't worth it. The United States paid them a lot of money. They had conversations with Israel. You know what, the economy, the economic gains.
Well, I mean,
and
the relation.
same thing with Jordan, same thing with Syria.
Turkey? The fuck's he talking about? Turkey. Turkey is a NATO country. It has been Israel's #1 dick rider privately and even publicly for quite some time. I don't know why he's fucking talking about Turkey. The fuck does he mean Turkey? There's no way. I don't think he's talking about Turkey, right? There's no shot.
Turkish politics.
Sure, yeah.
But the situation with Turkey was actually quite warm between Israel and Turkey in the 90s when you had the sort of secular Muslim regime
in the 90s,
of
but they signed
Kemal
peace
Ataturk in place, and now Erdogan has joined in the fray, and Erdogan is significantly more radical than what came before.
No, he's not. Shut the fuck up. It's just chirp, dude. It's just this. It's just chirp. Ben, shut up. Turkey's significantly more radical. Yeah, dude. Turkey has, like, even during the Mavi Marmara situation, Erdogan was constantly fucking yelling at Israel while they were still training Israeli pilots in Turkey in American bases. Like, the idea that Turkey has ever been at odds with Israel and its existence or with Zionism is fucking bullshit. Okay?
Oh, sorry. If I said Turkey, I meant Egypt. My bad.
Yeah. Okay. So
Egypt, yeah.
Right.
So like, in terms of like Egypt and Jordan, right, were the first two.
You need
big ones.
here's the thing.
Mhm.
You need.
Oh.
Is it possible that you could theoretically come to a deal with Iran only with a new leadership?
He was not talking about Turkey. He was talking about Egypt. Two entirely and utterly, insane mix up, but fine.
Okay, this is true for every peace agreement in the region.
Mhm.
You could not. Israel could not have made peace with.
Well, they made peace with Egypt, and
no.
Sadat was the leader for Yom Kippur,
They
right?
did not make peace with Nasser. Right.
Sure.
The point is that this is a different regime. You need a different regime. This is
But
one
I'm
of
saying
the
the same regime that did the part of the Yom Kippur War was the same regime that negotiated peace with Israel.
I mean, that's true.
Mhm.
It is also true that that is a relationship that could be cultivated specifically because it was Sadat who made clear he was going to come to the table.
Mhm.
Have the Iranians ever made clear that they would come to the table over, for example, the existence of the state of Israel?
No.
I mean, that is not a thing that's going to happen.
But I think people probably felt the same.
Every single one of their proxy groups, every one of them, not only calls for the destruction of the state of Israel,
Mhm.
they also call for the destruction of America. I mean, this is literally the Houthi slogan. They're
Oh
busy hitting ships, and there's
that's crazy. Why aren't they saying nice things about America instead? Aw. That's crazy. He thought Erdogan was the prime minister of Israel like 2 months ago. Yeah, after saying that he was the president of Syria or something. I saw the video. I saw the clip. Yeah. Like, the current Iranian regime is a direct consequence of American intervention. American intervention that originally came in 1953, okay, before Iran could ever even develop any real relations with Israel. So that's another American fuck up. So I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. I guess, like, Ben has to be a Shah defender in general, though. But he got Arafat and Erdogan mixed up. It is pretty cool that you can, demonstrate your overall lack of interest, care, knowledge when it comes to, like, Middle Eastern policy, foreign policy in general. But as long as, like, you're kind of aligned with American State Department shit, it, like, really doesn't matter. Most people will go, yeah, you're right. And also, all the better if your ideological foes are fucking Muslim of Muslim background. So then I can just say maybe there's like some kind of additional biases occurring here that is clouding their opinion on the region.
Their slogan is literally Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to the Jews, death to Israel. It doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, but and it's not all that catchy, but that is in fact their slogan. The notion that the regime that propagates that is going to be approached with diplomacy is not only wrong. The problem is that it's easy to say the stakes of diplomacy are okay, well, so we try to talk, right? Jaw is better than war. Sure. The only problem is that in the Middle East, weakness is taken as a sign that aggression might be an appropriate response. That is how things work in the Middle East. And the fact that Barack...
Oh, is that how things work in the Middle East? Why, Ben? Why is that how things work in the Middle East? Elaborate a little bit. Come on, Destiny. Ask him why he thinks that. These are not like, look, doesn't matter what your perspective is here. Doesn't matter if you agree with Israel or disagree with Israel. If you're looking at this on purely the fundamentals of debate, that's a fucking weak spot that any seasoned debater would immediately fucking hone in on and go, why do you think that that is the only way to deal with people in the Middle East? And then he says, well, it's their culture. They understand barbarism only, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a very racist thing to say, and you give them the rope to hang themselves with afterwards. Now, of course, I don't think Destiny is going to interrogate that because this is one area where he 100% agrees with. Like, I think him and Ben Shabibo are like completely fucking aligned on this issue.
that Joe Biden, rather, came into office with an orientation toward continuing the Obama policies in Iran has led to conflagrations, these sort of brush fires breaking out everywhere that Iran has borders with either the West or Israel or both, right? Any place that's happening is leading to brush fires because, again, the logic of violence in the Middle East is not quite the logic of violence in other places in the world. By the way, I think the logic of violence in the Middle East is actually closer to what most international politics looks like than we wish that it were.
Violence in the Middle East is not like anywhere else in the world? The fuck does that mean, brother? What are you saying? The logic of violence in the Middle East? What?
I mean, I think that's part of what's happening in Ukraine as well.
So you think
which brings me, by the way, here's my question about Ukraine.
Sure. Well, just real quick, and then you can answer this one now. So you think that for Iran, right, a country that has been sanctioned for God knows how many years now, you think that for Iran, just continuing to sanction them and contain them is an effective way, is more effective than trying to engage them in bilateral or multilateral peace talks?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, if that's the case, then why did the Iran denuclearization deal work tremendously well, as a matter of fact? Why did it? We also cooperated with Iran in the Middle East for the damn near duration, the entirety of our war on terror. Like, we didn't just come up with our fucking bombing targets on our own. We got them from Iran. So what's up? Can we cooperate with these fucking barbarian animals, these Muslim animals, these brown scary guys? Or can we not cooperate with them? This is turned into an interview. Please, Destiny. Ask
And the proof is in the pudding.
Oh my God.
Before we go to Ukraine, can I ask about Israel? So you're both mostly in agreement, but what is
I don't know
Israel?
about to say that.
Okay, but
what are you disagreeing
as
with?
I'm learning,
Come on.
what is Israel doing right? What is Israel doing wrong in this very specific
Get
current
in there, Lex.
war in Gaza?
I mean, frankly, I think that what Israel's doing wrong is if I were Israel, okay, like, again, America's interests are not coincident with...
Yeah, we literally cooperated with Iran on the invasion of Afghanistan. They give us intel on the Taliban. Exactly. It's fucking ridiculous.
Israel's interests. If I were an Israeli leader, I would have swiveled up and out and knocked the bleep out of Hezbollah early.
What does
Because I
that
think
mean?
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, what? Bro, they tried that. What do you mean? You are such a gross little worm, dude. You fucking violent little shit. It's like, that's right. I would go in there and knock the shit out of Hezbollah. Yeah, really? You mean like what Israel did already? How did that work out? Did that work out well for Israel the last time that happen? Shut the fuck up, Ben.
What does that mean?
So I would have, Yoav Gallant, who's the defense minister of Israel, was encouraging Netanyahu, who's the prime minister, and the war cabinet, including Benny Gantz. So whenever people talk about the Netanyahu government, that's not what's in place right now. There's a unity war government in place that includes the political opposition. The reason I point that out is because there are a lot of people politically who will suggest that the actions Israel is currently taking are somehow the manifestation of a right-wing government. Israel currently does not have a quote-unquote right-wing government. They have a unity government that includes the opposition. In any case, Yoav Gallant was urging in the very early days of the war that Israel should turn north, and instead of hitting Hamas, they should actually take the opportunity to knock Hezbollah out, because Hezbollah is significant.
This is so bad. This is such a dumbass fucking take. Oh my God. Ben is an accelerationist that wants to wipe out the Zionist entity, okay? This is literally like, he's like a fucking permanent first world genocide JD Pong guy, but for Israel. He's like, yeah, wipe out Hezbollah. Yeah, dude. First strike against a foreign nation in Lebanon, okay? Just immediately diving in head first immediately diving in headfirst into Lebanon and fighting a military with trained soldiers and significantly better munitions, like not bathtub bombs that can be intercepted by Iron Dome, which of course Israel has many defenses, some of which, as far as I understand, are, you know, pretty good. I mean, I think it's really, really stupid that Ben is making this argument, especially when like Israel is having a hard time in fucking Gaza. Okay. Like, I'm not saying that Hezbollah would wipe out Israel or anything like that, but there is no way that Israel would be able to withstand a direct conflict with Hezbollah and also Hamas at the same time in Gaza without Iran interfering, and then America also being pulled into the conflict and completely just turning it into World War III. The IDF would wipe out Hezbollah if they go full force. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, I know we like to do gross power fantasies like this, but this already happened one time. What you're describing is a thing that occurred already. And Israel demonstrably failed to do what you just said. They never go full force. Dude, this is like a 14-year-old talking about America, okay? It's like, dude, bro, are you kidding me? Dude, they didn't go full force. The Dahiyya Doctrine was invented in Lebanon, but it was not considered full force, guys. You don't understand. Israel did to Lebanon what it's doing to fucking Gaza, and they still had to fucking pull out, okay? So the idea that they would go full force somehow and different, you're delusional if you think Hezbollah is comparable to the IDF. No, brother, you're delusional, okay? Because wars are not won and lost in the way that you think they are won and lost. Wars are not about like full force going in and doing bombing campaigns and then, ooh, my military power is better than your military power, and then we shake hands and I lose and you win. It's not how it works. America lost in Vietnam and in Afghanistan. Russia lost in Afghanistan. Why did that happen? Think about it for a second, and you will understand that obviously war isn't just about like who has the most powerful military. It's not like fucking Call of Duty, okay? It's just, this is like specific armchair quarterbacking, talking about like, oh, dude, Israel could go full force, dude. Yeah, really? Is that why they've been able to wipe out Hamas? Is that what happened? Is they're going full force? Yeah, tell that to the 24 Israeli occupying force soldiers that got fucking exploded with their own munitions yesterday. What it's like to go full force. There is no fucking full force, okay? It doesn't work that way. That's ridiculous. You think this is like, you think counterinsurgency is like fucking Call of Duty? It's so stupid. I mention this all the time. There is a limitation to how much war you can wage, okay? They can't go full force in Gaza because they would kill too many people. Dude, shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Oh, yeah, Israel is really restrained in Gaza, famously. And definitely not. Israel is super restrained in Gaza, famously, just like they were super restrained in Lebanon. Listen, man, wars and the continuation of wars is done on attrition. How many soldiers can you throw at the fucking problem until you no longer can throw soldiers at the problem and you have genuinely destabilized your own country? Part of the reason why Russia has been able to effectively take over eastern territories in Ukraine, as opposed to Ukraine being able to purge the Russian invaders, is directly a consequence of that. Russia can throw bodies into the fucking meat grinder over and over and over and over and over again, which they have done. They have more people and they have more conscripts. And even if they don't have the best of weapons overall, okay, or even enough combat experience, they still have people. Because guess what, dude? Any cop can tell you this as well. One guy with a weapon is still a major threat. One guy with a weapon can still hold a position, okay? No matter how inexperienced they are. So people is one of the most important parts of war and attrition, okay? Israel, despite having awesome weapons in general, does not have the capacity to engage in a two-front war without directly involving the United States of America, okay? The United States of America is the most powerful fucking country on the planet. What are we talking about? Even they had to inevitably pull out of Afghanistan and cede the entire territory that we occupied for 20 years to the Taliban, the guys we fought. Hezbollah is Hamas time stand and is not surrounded and blockaded, meaning it can more easily be resupplied. It has thousands of precision missiles, and even most are likely intercepted or destroyed. If 10% get through and hit power plants and desalination plants, it would be really bad. Exactly. Like, guy can't hold a weapon in comparison to the firepower that Israel has. They could put Gaza into the dirt in a week if they wanted to. No, man. No. You are engaging in fantasy. This is pure copium from America and American adjacent power players who want to fucking jerk off about how powerful they are. No, that's not, dude. Do you think Israel is restrained in Gaza? Like, what are you guys, delusional? They literally leveled the entirety of northern Gaza. What are we talking about? And the same thing they did in Lebanon too. You can genocide civilians all day. Genociding civilians is one thing, okay? That's not how you win wars. You can keep killing as many civilians as you want, but as long as there's entrenched power within a militia group that has popular support and has the capacity to be resupplied, and in Gaza, they don't even have that, and yet they're still holding off fairly fucking well, all things considered. Hezbollah, on the other hand, has the entire nation at that point. It would be unimaginable. This is ridiculous. These people are thinking World War II style total war. Countries don't fight like that anymore. No country's gone full force in like 50 years. Yeah. Israel is going maximum force. Anything beyond, like, I guess the only thing Israel would do more than this would basically be to just nuke it. What is this? Why do you hate America so much, but you live here and have funds to move out? Sounds like one of those guys that makes how to make money courses, but the way they made that money was through the course. What? You think I make money by saying America is bad? Do you know how much more money I would make if I said America is good? What kind of stupid take is this? Look at these two goobers right here. Do you think they're particularly charismatic? It doesn't require too much to just say America good always. Okay? I would wipe the floor with the entirety of the right-wing commentary sphere if I were to fucking do a heel turn and become like a right-wing guy. Oh my Lord. Oh. Anyway, it's time to become a Republican one day, dude. I'm just gonna fucking sell all of my values and just do this shit. Oh, it's on Echo. That's why it's so fucking hot in here.
Significantly more dangerous to the existence of the state of Israel than Hamas. I actually agree with that. As far as what Israel has been doing wrong in the actual war, I mean, I think that, again, from an American perspective, I think that Israel is doing pretty well. From an Israeli perspective, if I were Israeli, I would actually want Israel to be less loose about sending its soldiers in on the ground level. So Israel's attempting to minimize civilian casualties, and the cost of that has been the highest.
Yeah, he's saying Israel should still, in the most cowardly way, kill civilians from afar. Nice, man. Thank you for your armchair general, dude. No, don't send the soldiers in. They're dying.
Military death toll that Israel has had since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. I mean, I personally know, through one degree of separation, 3 separate people have been killed in Gaza. And that's because they're going in door to door. It's because they're attempting to minimize civilian casualties, and they're losing a lot of guys.
No, yeah, dude. They're losing a lot of guys because they're going door to door to shoot TikTok videos, okay? They're like, oh yeah, this is terror, baby, behind me. Look, it's a playground. And then like they blow it up. And in the process, some of them are getting sniped, dude. Nice. They're trying to minimize civilian casualties. Okay, I'm sorry. If the Israeli occupying force is trying to minimize casualties and yet they've still killed 25,000 Palestinians in the process, then you have to disband, okay? You have to immediately disband because it's criminal negligence, okay? It's either deliberate, which I think it is, and it's ethnic cleansing, or it is the worst kind of criminal negligence you've ever seen, and it must be immediately disbanded. You have to disarm every Israeli soldier immediately and put them in like a padded room or something. Keep them away from scissors and sharp objects because holy moly, they really fucked that up. Okay? Jesus Christ.
In this particular war. You know, the problem that Israel has had, historically speaking, is that Israel got very complacent about its own security situation. They believed the technology was going to somehow.
Yeah, by the way, with this logic, Russia is way better at minimizing civilian casualties than Israel. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The problem is Russia is not sending pamphlets ahead of time. Okay? If Russia was like flying in pamphlets into like Lviv, then it would be fine. It's a valid target. They're minimizing civilian casualties. It's war.
correct for the hatred on the other side of the wall. That okay, so our people have to live underground for 2 weeks at a time while some rockets fall, but at least it's not a war. And that complacence, bred what happened on October 7th. So to me, what Israel did wrong was years and years and years of complacency.
Bro, what, see, Bucha? Brother, you're misunderstanding my point. I'm saying that what Russia is doing is bad. And just like what Israel is doing is bad. I think you misunderstood my point. I don't know if you did that on purpose or not.
And belief in an Oslo system that is at root a failure, because you cannot make a peace agreement with people who do not want to make peace with you. So that's what I think Israel is doing wrong. I have a feeling there's going to be wide divergence on this point.
Maybe. In terms of broadly speaking, I generally oppose settlement expansion. Is a thing that Israel does incorrectly that I think is kind of like provocative to at least all the Palestinians in the West Bank, and it probably energizes hatred in the Gaza Strip for them as well. In terms of conducting warfare, the one thing that I always say to everybody, especially Americans, is you can't evaluate things from an American perspective. It's very stupid. It happened a lot with Ukraine, where people are like, oh, well, didn't they work with the Nazis, and like weren't the Soviets the good guys? And it's like, well, in other parts of the world, it's not quite as simple. And I think the same is true for Israel-Palestine. That a lot of Americans will analyze the conflict as just being one between only Israel and Palestine, which it's not. It's a conflict between Israel and then Palestine, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran. Right now it is. I think that however, one area where I'll break with Ben is I think that minimizing civilian casualties and everything is very, very, very important. I think on the Israeli side, I don't think it's important so that the U.S. will stay with them, because I think the U.S. is probably going to stick with Israel as long as they don't do anything crazy. And I don't even think it matters for the international community. It definitely doesn't matter for the UN, because Jesus Christ. However, I think it's really, really, really important that I think that in the Middle East, broadly speaking, I think that leadership, especially in the Gulf, has gotten over the Palestinian issue. I think that leadership is kind of like they don't care as much anymore. But the population.
Oh, anymore? Dude, what are you talking about? When did they care? The Gulf nation states leadership and the Gulf nation states population are almost always at odds on this issue. Okay? Like, there's no world in which that is a thing. The Gulf leadership just wants F-16s, okay? They want nice missile defense systems, they want planes, they want cool weapons, and they want trade, okay? Yeah, there's no way he's talking about like 1973, I assume. Like there hasn't been any momentum since then. So I think he's making it seem like these guys like recently had a heel turn or something. And it's not so recent. As far as I've been alive, it's not been a thing.
Populations still care quite a bit. And I think that the main issue that Israel could run into is if the civilian death toll does climb too high, and if they start to hit this 40, 50, 60,000 number of civilian casualties, they run the risk of the civilian populations in the surrounding Middle Eastern states becoming so antagonistic towards Israel that they start to take steps back towards normalization in the region. So for instance,
what? There is a magic number, and the number is 40, 50, 60,000. I mean, it's already probably at like more than 30. I think the 25,000 number is like pretty conservative as far as estimates goes. No, I don't think the populations of these nations are fond of Israel at all. The civilian populations are very hostile towards Israel, and that's not going to change anytime soon. If anything, it's gotten significantly worse and is a genuine problem. This is at the heart of why I always say Israel makes Jews less safe, not more. Okay? Like, Israel's actions, Israel claims, is done at the behest of Judaism. This is not true, obviously, but that distinction is one that we can make in the United States of America because we're not that close to the fucking conflict. A lot of people see Israel doing this at the behest of Judaism with the Star of David on the side of the fucking plane, and they don't think beyond that. Okay? That's it. They look at it, they see that these guys are America's soldiers here, and they're doing this at the behest of America and also at the behest of Judaism. It's the America part is correct. The Judaism part is obviously incorrect, but I'm not going to expect so many of these people to make that distinction when they're so close to the conflict in and of itself. Okay? Israel is just as much as a disgrace to Jews as ISIS is a disgrace to Muslims. Yeah, except the difference is ISIS and Islam are not actually compatible. As a matter of fact, if you ask Muslims around the fucking world, almost all Muslims would tell you that ISIS is not compatible with Islam, and ISIS's targets are predominantly Islamic populations. They are like a colonial force. Judaism is incompatible with Zionism, and Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism whatsoever. No matter how much Israel tries to LARP as though it does. That's it. Nobody should be writing and making that distinction, but Americans, especially American Christian Zionists, American Jewish Zionists that are older as well, make this distinction, or not make this distinction, sorry. They try to conflate the two, not thinking that there are genuine consequences for that, because other people see it and think, okay, well, these guys are doing this for Judaism, which creates more anti-Semitism. Okay? Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I want to keep going on this, but I feel like there's too much to there's so much more to talk about. Are you saying that Judaism is a problem? What? Did you seriously just say Judaism is a problem? What? No. Oh, come on, dude. Oh my Lord. Ay ay ay. Oh, fucking hell. Okay, dude. Here's the 3-minute ad break now, you son of a bitch. It's fucked up. Oh. I say finish this section. The rest is meh. I watched it all. I'm sorry to hear that. All right, well, I'll try to finish this segment.
Since I know that Bahrain, I think, already pulled out their ambassador to Israel, my guess is going to be it's temporary. I know that on the public speaking side, you've got a lot of people condemning Israel for the attacks. And on the private side, you've got people telling Israel, please kill all of Hamas because this is untenable and nobody wants to work in this situation. I don't know if this ended up being true or not. I'm guessing it didn't. But I saw on a couple of Twitter accounts, it was leaked that potentially Saudi Arabia was considering installing a government in the West Bank that they would run.
This is like, I'm sorry. Okay, no, I can't do this. I'm not. Okay. This is pure fantasy. This is the absolute dumbest conversation to have on this issue. Okay. I'm sorry. Like, it's almost as idiotic as like America being like, we're going to put the Palestinian Authority in charge in the Gaza Strip. Like, you don't know anything. What are you saying? This literally is the fucking main problem. How is he simultaneously saying that, like, oh, well, we have to deal with Iran through peaceful means, which is correct, but then turning around and just completely overriding Palestinians and their needs and their interests, okay? And talking over it and talking about like the Gulf Partnership and whether or not this was like good to stabilize the region or not, as though that has anything to do with fucking Palestine. That is the whole point of it. It is directly contradicting what he said earlier because he was trying to make an argument about fucking Donald Trump with the Abraham Accords, okay? He literally said originally, don't you think that the Abraham Accords kind of sidestep Palestinians? Like, did I mishear that? Didn't he fucking say that when he was talking about why October 7th happened, when he was trying to shit on Donald Trump? And now he's talking about how, now he's literally talking about how, like, oh, well, all these regional leaders are actually, begging Israel to kill Hamas. Like, that doesn't mean anything. That's the whole point. Regional Gulf region leaders do not have a say in this process because what is happening to the Palestinians is unjustifiable. And the Gulf region leaders have always been at odds with their own citizens on this issue regardless. And the only reason why don't you go on, Hasan? Oh, wait. No, I mean, I would love to debate Ben Shapiro on this, especially on this. Holy fuck. It's, I don't know. I'm shocked that he's like talking about the Saudi leadership potentially being installed in Gaza. Like, all of this would be devastating.
No, I mean, I think Israel would love nothing better than that, but that is
For
not
sure,
something the
yeah,
Saudis.
okay.
One of the big problems in the Middle East is literally no one wants to preside over the Palestinians.
Yes.
No one.
So
Maybe
I think
Arab
that-
states,
Let the fucking Palestinians preside over themselves then. What are you talking about?
Israel, no one.
Yeah. So I think the issue is, and I'm largely actually, I'm very sympathetic towards the Palestinians because I think that for, since 48 and onwards, I think that all of the Arab states super gassed them up on that. They wanted the Palestinians to fight because they wanted to fight with Israel. However, as time has gone on and they've realized that it's kind of a lost cause, states have started to drop out. So you're getting these bilateral peace treaties with Egypt and with Jordan. You're getting multilateral.
No, it's because Palestinians don't have anything. They have nothing. They have no means of like securing regional partnerships. And the only way that they've ever been able to at least like fight on their own is due to the fact that they are a destabilizing force against America's colonial vassal state in the region, Israel. That's it. Beyond that, Palestinians have nothing. They have no commerce. They have no economy. They have no natural resources. So, of course, nobody gives a shit. These wars are fought, or these allegiances are made not on the kindness of people's hearts. They're made on material necessity. They're not gonna. The Palestinians, unfortunately, are very poor. So of course, no one's gonna come to their defense And the only utility that they've had is to destabilize the major destabilizing force, Israel. That is the major utility that they have. That's why Iran funds them, not because like they personally think that like these guys are a part of this. Yeah. In the game of realpolitik, from the view of some Arab governments, the Palestinians have literally nothing to offer compared to Israel. And those nation states have always tried to manage their own population and hope that they don't get too mad at them because they want American contracts significantly more than they give a shit about the Palestinian plight. Let's be fucking real. That's it. That's the whole point. So reaffirming that relationship and re-solidifying it is not going to change anything. In the eyes of the Palestinians, it's not going to change anything. You have to either go full genocide or you have to start dealing with the Palestinians as equal partners in this process and offer them citizenship. Israel is doing half genocide, like the slow burn Nakba over the course of 75 years, and expecting everybody to come to their fucking defense in this process. Of course, people are going to fight back. You can't push people into ghettos and shut them off from the rest of the world and expect them not to fight back.
Agreements like the Abraham Accords, and now the Palestinians are looking around and like, okay, well, you guys told us to fight all this time, and now the only people that we have supporting us are Iranian proxies. So the Palestinians are in a very weird spot where they've like lost all their support. I think that
Palestinians have lost all their support. What the fuck are you saying? Palestinians haven't had as much support in fucking recent history. If you're talking about the actual population, if you're talking about the governments themselves, yeah, they've never given a shit, as you also correctly mentioned. This is why after the Abraham Accords, one of the main ways some governments were selling it was hundreds of millions of dollars in trade each month with Israel. Yeah. Ultimately, they can't sell that to their population, though. They can't sell that concept to their population for two reasons. One, there's definitely a lot of anti-Semitism still. But more importantly than that, the people living in these countries see their brothers and sisters get fucking pulverized by American rockets that Israel is using. They're never going to turn around and be like, well, at least we have good trade deals. Like, it doesn't work that way. I lived in Egypt for 6 years, and during the revolution, propaganda against the Palestinians was a normalized thing by the Egyptian army and its regime there. Palestinians sold their land, Palestinians are thieves, and so on. That was most like support the position of the Egyptian government to blockade Gaza from Rafah. I wonder what the position in Egypt is now.
Israel, what I would say to be
No,
quote
that's
unquote
true. They tried that in Turkey too. There are historians in Turkey that also run that narrative too. It's a common narrative in the Middle East to like offer support to Israel by saying like Palestinians themselves personally sold their lands to Jews that were coming in. And there is obviously truth to that too, by the way. Like they did, not Palestinians, but like landowners did sell their lands to some of the incoming Jewish population that was migrating from Europe. That part is definitely true. This does not justify any of Israel's actions, however, but that is definitely. But overall, it doesn't matter. Not only does it not excuse anything, but also it certainly doesn't excuse Israel's current actions. And more importantly than anything else, I would say that by and large, I haven't looked at polling in Egypt specifically, but by and large, since this last Israeli siege, the support for Palestinians have absolutely increased. Yeah, the total land owned by the Jewish population by 1945 was still only 5.67%. The entirety of Palestine, the entire land sales narrative is idiotic. Yeah.
critical of Israel is Israel needs to take strong steps towards peace that probably involves them enduring some undue hardship. So not the October 7th attacks, because Jesus, that's way too much, but, you know, other types of, attacks that they might have to deal with that might cause some civilians to die that they don't come out over the top with and retaliate with if there's ever going to be peace in that region. However, another thing that I've always said is a huge problem between Israel and Palestine is I think that both sides think that if they continue to fight, it will be good for them. But the problem is one side is delusional. Israel, I think
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a suck fest over here, dude. What the fuck? This is devolved into like, this is not even a yap fest anymore. This is a circle jerk suck fest. What is happening?
Israel wants to continue to fight because they get justifications for the annexation of the Golan Heights. They get justifications for expansions, especially into Area C, that I think they're probably going to try to annex soon. They get justifications for the increased military posturing towards the Gaza Strip and the embargoes. And Israel is right that if the conflict continues, really the situation only improves for Israel over time. But the Palestinians also all believe that if they keep fighting, they've thought this since 2000 under Arafat, that if they just keep fighting, they'll get better gains too. But that's not the case.
Is there a difference between?
That's crazy. The Palestinians have no choice. Israel holds all the cards. Israel is the colonial occupying power. These aren't just like fucking buzzwords that I'm using here. They mean something, okay? Israel is a belligerent occupier upon the Palestinian population, okay? They set the standard of violence. They have the capacity to de-escalate said violence. It is absolutely ridiculous. The notion that like the side that wants to continue hostilities is the Palestinian side is ridiculous. Strangely, I don't disagree with what he's saying here in the sense that like continuing attacks almost a given if Israel makes moves towards ending the apartheid. Let's be honest, but it's imperative that Israel not respond with a fucking genocide every time they get attacked. Otherwise, nothing will change. No. That is, if you continue hostilities, then yes, there's always going to be back and forth. There's also another alternative here, which is to completely cease hostilities entirely and end the occupation, which he's not mentioning conveniently. He's making it seem as though there's only one option here, which is Israel just keeps its violent occupation and its apartheid regime upon the Palestinian population. And then, you know, yeah, they're just going to take an L every now and then, and some civilians are going to die, which is a ridiculous take to have, especially because there is there 2 months of ceasefire is being negotiated on currently, right? Within the Israeli population or within the Israeli war government and Al-Qassam and all the other Palestinian militancy. Okay? Right now that's happening. Okay, 2 months of cessation of hostilities. Let's see where that goes. We let the Palestinians breathe a little bit. Okay? But the apartheid still continues, and that's still not just because Israel is going to continue doing shit that they're doing. Israel's going to continue doing the shit that they were doing before October 7. And when that continues, resistance to that will understandably continue. Do you understand? How the fuck did Destiny drop the ball so hard on this topic? I used to think he was at least a little genuine, fucking calling a genocide a conflict and calling the Gazans delusional to stop being genocided. No, I mean, I don't think he gives a shit because, I mean, let's be real. Most Americans don't. Liberal and conservative alike. They're very callous in their indifference to Muslims, Arabs alike. They just don't care. They don't think that these are like real humans with dreams, aspirations. I should clarify. What I mean is that even if Israel ends the apartheid tomorrow, surely there will still be incidents that currently, according to Israeli leadership, would just stoke tensions again and not put a backstop to public support, for example, but they need to power through it and just see the light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, that part is correct. Yes, I do agree. If the reality is there's always going to be militant factions, this is something that I've mentioned as well, but you would have to deal with it through the civil process that you would deal with people otherwise. Yes, even if Israel magically perished the apartheid tomorrow, yes, there would still be hostilities. Of course, there would be probably more hostilities on the psychopathic settler side. I think that the settlers would probably still continue to engage in way, way worse acts of terrorism, but there would definitely be hostilities on the Palestinian side as well, either as a retaliation for the terror that they are withstanding, the continuation of that terror, or hostilities across the board due to, a century of bad blood. Having said that, you would have to deal with that in the same way that we deal with like a Timothy McVeigh, right? Through the civil process, in the way that you would deal with domestic terrorism. That's not what Destiny was saying anyway. Destiny was saying Israel needs to just not be as aggro when Palestinians fight back.
In Palestinian citizens and the leadership, when you say that.
So your one-state solution is not viable? Brother, if you think that what I'm saying is not viable, I don't know what to tell you. No. I'm saying that, yes, it is not going to be perfect and magical immediately. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't greatly avoid significantly larger conflict, okay? Because nothing, and I mean nothing, justifies an apartheid regime, okay? Leftists will encourage Palestinians to fight until they're all dead. Liberals will actually think of real solutions to the conflict, but they're the evil ones. Yeah, you're so right, dude. Liberals are thinking of real solutions to the conflict, like saying no red lines for Israel or giving them more dumb bombs to use upon Palestinian children. Pragmatic solutions such as that one. Thank you for the pragmatic solution of helping Israel continue its ethnic cleansing campaign, liberal. It's really cool. I mean, yeah, opening up another front potentially, bombing Yemen. I love the liberal solutions to genocide management. which is let's bomb Yemen too. Fuck it.
All people. I love all people around the world. And I think that when we analyze
Yeah, don't forget giving coordinates while saying don't bomb these positions. Yeah. But then Israel bombs them anyway, and they go, oops, well, I told you not to bomb them. Why are you bombing these positions? Whatever. Here, use these bombs next time.
issues, I think that we have to be very honest with what the people on the ground think. And the idea that Hamas is just this one-off thing in the Gaza.
Oh, for the record, you said I agree with you. Nothing could justify genocide, but you said there would be hostility. So I asked if it's viable or not. I wanted your opinion. Sorry. What I should have responded with was this. Okay. It's not that like ongoing genocide is unjustifiable. It's this. Acts of terror are there's a high likelihood that acts of terror will continue in the immediate aftermath of the dissolution of the apartheid regime. There's a likelihood, right? There's I guess not a lot of historical precedent for it, especially when like you look at post-apartheid South Africa, post-Troubles Ireland. Like the hostilities usually cease when the major occupying power is no longer occupying. But Israel's a little different. It has had a much longer apartheid than all of these other examples. So there's probably additional frustrations that might happen. However, okay, the hostilities that occur in the aftermath of the dissolution of the apartheid in Israel are still going to be marginal in comparison to if Israel were to continue its apartheid and there's a shit ton more terrorism and then more state terrorism as a retaliation to the Palestinian resistance acts. Does that make sense? So from a utilitarian framework, Israel's cessation of hostilities and the dissolution of the apartheid regime would be infinitely more beneficial in the long term than trying to maintain the apartheid. Even if you don't want to think about it on the pure boundary of like apartheid is completely unacceptable. It is also more pragmatic. Anyway, so yeah.
Strip is not only incorrect with the situation on the ground, it's also incredibly ahistorical. And the idea that like the Palestinians in the West Bank, of which I believe the most recent polling shows, I want to say 75 to 80% support the October 7th attacks. Palestinians in general want to fight in violent conflict with Israel. That's not just the position of the government. That's not just people. There's a reason why about.
Okay, that's crazy. Yes, dude. It's because Israel is doing, would you say that these argument that the Palestinians should basically stop attacking Israel if they don't want to get glass is comparable to the argument pertaining to police violence? They should just comply if they don't want to get shot, or is that too much of a stretch? No, it's identical. Israel, the way Americans analyze power dynamics is very similar domestically. No, it is identical in that situation, even if maybe even worse than that. But basically lay down and take it is the position. And that's because, okay, here's why people like Destiny, and there are many people like him who have brought upon themselves this like wave of information in the aftermath of October 7th to like hurriedly read through as many Wikipedia pages as they possibly can to make sense of this like very long history, right? Yeah, if you try to like make sense of the situation by playing catch up in a matter of 2 months, you're not going to have the full scope, especially when you don't have the knowledge, I guess, or even care about what the regular maintenance of Israel looks like when it's not in direct conflict with Gaza, when it's not sieging Gaza. Okay? The point is, October 6th, there was a news report, I forget, I think it was like Euromed or something, that wrote a report one day before, I think it was either one day before or a couple days before, that 2023 was the most violent year for Palestinian children. October 6th, before October 7th. That report came out one day before. That's something that a lot of people don't understand, because outside of these sieges, people don't realize that the daily maintenance of Israel's apartheid is backbreaking. It's unimaginable cruelty. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is not because like this report triggered something. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply stating that like October 6th was already violent for the Palestinians. So was October 5. So was October 4. Every day living under an apartheid regime against a belligerent occupier is always going to be violent. And no, I have not watched Destiny's interview with one of the leading Israeli new historians, Benny Morris, because I like other Israeli new historians that work upon Benny Morris's foundational work and still maintain the position that it was a genocide and it wasn't good, rather than maybe it was a genocide and it was good. Oh, fuck. Maybe I shouldn't have said the Nakba was a genocide. I've made up my mind. I've changed my mind, actually, guys. Please don't look at previous works of mine. Also, fuck anyone that uses the previous investigations that I've conducted. No, I don't. I haven't watched their interview. I'm glad that he finally arrived at the Benny Morris equation, though, after months and months of reading Wikipedia pages. Okay? What's wrong with changing your views after learning more? Come on. That's so unimaginably fucking cynical in your approach. Brother, like, that's such a disingenuous way to frame this conversation. Why do you guys always do this? There's a difference between conducting research and literally saying that the outcome of this research is like leads to ethnic cleansing, and then turning around and being like, never mind. Okay, never mind. Even though the majority of the people that actually use Benny Morris's research as well, including all of these other, including all genocide scholars, Holocaust historians, like the overwhelming majority, understand that the investigation of Benny Morris and other new historians uncovered directly point to the Nakba being a deliberate attempt of systematically ethnically cleansing and ethnically displacing Palestinians in 1948. Okay? Seems like he does more research than you. No, you just came in here to say that because you don't know anything about the way I've covered this conflict. I have talked to academics on this issue over and over again. I've used their works. I've interviewed them directly. I've interviewed journalists on the fucking ground that have like actually been in Gaza. I've interviewed Palestinians. I've interviewed journalists that have embedded with the Houthis for years, covered Yemen, covered Somalia, covered all of these other countries. I've interviewed Knesset members. I've interviewed conscientious objectors of the Israeli military. You don't know any of those things because you have no interest in learning about this stuff. You're not intellectually curious at all. Okay? That's why you sit there and go, I've made up my mind about a guy who said that this kind of the genocide of Palestinians was totally permissible, and then played catch up by cracking open bottles of Adderall and like trying to hurriedly read through Wikipedia pages, okay? And then finally arriving at like a historian that kind of agrees with him and interviewing him. That's not, you're doing post hoc rationalizations for a position that you actually decided on. Yeah, I know. Okay, there you go. That isn't really what Benny Morris says in his work, though. The Nakba was complicated. They did not go into the conflict with intent. Plan D was motivated by military matters, but they were happy to accept how things went and blocked return. It's nuanced. Yeah, got it. Okay. Well, they could have just easily allowed people to return, but they didn't. And they kept killing people when people were trying to desperately go back to their homes. So I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest. You slap on the "it's nuanced" sticker. That's why I laugh at people that bring up Benny Morris, because his own like research in the matter directly points to this being bad. The deviation that he has from other new historians, okay, is that he looks at the Nakba, recognizes that it was a planned military action, okay, and then says, but it was kind of valid. That's it. The other guys like Avi Shlaim or Ilan Pape don't think that. They look at it and go, nope, this was pretty valid, actually. Like, this is legitimately an act of ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement. Sorry, I'm going to go with the guys that think that the Nakba was ethnic cleansing and it wasn't nuanced in the sense that it was totally justifiable. Does that make sense? I hope you understand. D-Man has an interview with Barry Myers just trying to pretend the research he did wasn't discussed and validated is a little silly. Wait, what? It's called post hoc rationalization. If you're a debate lord, you know that, okay? Like, I am very familiar with Benny Morris and have been for quite some time. When I came to the conclusion that a one-state solution was the only viable solution, okay, I didn't arrive at that conclusion just, you know, on my own without ever like thinking about it. You know what I mean? Without ever doing any reading. That's the difference. Sounds like you're mad. I'm not. I'm a little sad because so many of you are in here refusing to see the point. Also, there's a reason why your intellectual daddy right now is not looking too good in this conversation with Ben Shapiro, and it's not turning into a debate, but instead a suckfest of epic proportions. Yeah, Benny Morris is a part of the Israeli New Historians, the first prominent group of scholars in Israel that investigated the atrocities of the foundation and the answer in the earlier war. But Morris is somewhat of a turncoat. After the second intifada, he kind of turned to a position of violence was actually good and necessary. Those Palestinians are animals. I won't go that far, but you know, yeah, his position is more nuanced. That the Nakba was, you know, it happened, but also it was good. If you want to see how Benny Morris fell, look at this article he wrote in 2022. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict isn't about race. A new Amnesty International report charging Israel with apartheid applies the wrong lens to a struggle between nations. Oh my Lord. Yeah, I mean, he's just like, but that means a scholar, D-Man has an interview with Benny Morris, but that means a scholar validated D-Man even if you disagree. Yes, one scholar that has gone back on his original work that was formative. Is Avi Shlaim a good historian? Yes. This is crazy. How do you not see that you're engaging in a tremendous act of copium here? Okay, yes, you can find a scholar that will agree with you on this issue, even if his own formative work disagrees with it. If you read it yourself, you would come to different conclusions. What are you talking about? No, and Benny Morris isn't some like random guy, for the record. I mean, he is an important scholar, okay? The issue here is you're going, my favorite guy made his conclusions. Yeah, the Dersh is a scholar who agrees, but that's not applicable because the Dersh is a serial plagiarist and also not a good person and not exactly a historian, okay? Benny Morris is. That's the difference. Why don't you read the whole article? Well, one, because it's paywalled, and two, I don't want to fucking listen to an article about how calling Israel an apartheid regime is wrong because it's fucking idiotic. They tag your post with Hamas Piker on the Destiny Reddit. These people coming in here are not being charitable towards you. I know. I don't think I'll ever be able to change your minds, chatters, because he's not going to read it because it's not a Twitter headline. Yeah, this is what I mean. It's like, this is copium, brother. This is one issue that I can tell you with all sincerity that I know a lot more of than, like I said, your intellectual idol here who is sucking Ben Shapiro's cock aggressively because they agree full tilt. That's it. And you can sit here and be like, oh, he's reading Wikipedia. It's called research. Look it up. All you do is like read Twitter posts or whatever. You can use the talking points that you heard from Destiny and repeat it in here. But the reality of the matter is there are infinitely more scholars who agree with me and journalists who agree with me on the issue than not. Okay? The fact of the matter is, for all intents and purposes, every single fucking organization on the ground agrees with me on this issue as well, because it's correct. Israel is an apartheid state, no matter how hard you act like that's not the reality. Okay? It's funny to be like, oh, he just reads tweets when the tweets I'm reading are literally directly from journalists. Okay? Every now and then, maybe not so much, but the overwhelming majority. Most historians disagree with you, actually. That is 1000% incorrect. It feels really weird because this is an issue that I've written about and covered for the past 10 fucking years and I'm fairly knowledgeable on. And yet, for some reason, like white Americans from Iowa who just found out about Israel yesterday are coming in here to be like, well, you're a Muslim fundamentalist, you're an Islamist piece of shit and a terror lover, while also simultaneously being like, well, this one historian agreed with Destiny after he said he wanted to do genocide to the Palestinians. You're not actually having a serious conversation. I think many of us are that are with you are trying to listen and learn from you and therefore more silent. The other people are going to be louder chatters, in my opinion. I get your sadness. You have a lot more patience than me. It just makes me sad. It's funny that people imply you're not as well educated because you don't read Wikipedia. Like, you've been doing this for long enough. You don't need to learn about things for the first time from reading from fucking Wikipedia. Yeah. Anyway, but good luck to all of you. Okay?
you.